July 25th, and the budget workshop is called to order at 1 p.m. And I'd just like to welcome all the children in the audience. Thanks for being here. Hi. Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Douther. Present. Commissioner Hodges.
Here.
Commissioner Oakley.
Here.
Vice Mayor Weinstein.
Here.
Mayor Black.
Present. The floor is now open for public comment. Please remember to state your full name and address. Speak directly into the microphone. And please be civil and respectful. Thank you.
Hi. Hello, Deborah Rogowski, 17117 Gulf Boulevard, and I'm here because I heard, and I don't know if I heard it correctly, that the splash pad was not going to be funded.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is on the agenda. Thanks for reminding me. You can speak at that time. This is to speak on anything that's not on the agenda. I should have reminded you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
How you guys doing? I'm Will Vinziano, 15045 Madeira Way, dive bar, right there. Actually, I'm coming to ask to see if I can be allowed to have a food truck. I said once in the beginning we were told we could have one, and then you guys didn't like the size of it, so I'm asking if I can somehow do a standard size food truck. I know St. Pete Beach does one for Masteries down there, so they have pretty much laid out the plan and the footwork, so that's kind of a good example we could utilize. It would definitely benefit myself and my customers. It's hard to get food at night. Talk to Linda about that.
You have to go to the planning and zoning director?
Well, from what I understand, there is nothing on the books about it, so I guess I had to, Linda told me to come to a workshop.
Oh.
And,
Well, could you kind of elaborate a little bit? Is this something that you're going to have there, every day, all day, or just in the evening?
well, I mean, ultimately, it'd be nice to have it there all day, but for events, Super Bowls, probably just during like certain hours, late night hours, and maybe like from 7 o'clock. Definitely weekends for sure. But that's something that could be, I'm definitely flexible with that.
So where do we go from here?
Madam Mayor, members of the board, if I may, what I will do is I'll get with the Planning and Zoning Department Director and get some more information about that. And if there's some modifications to public policy as to how you would like to regulate that type of operation, we'll bring that back for discussion, but we'll scour the code because this is the first time I've heard of this particular item, but we'll see if we have policies in place that effectively can allow for it on a special event type of scenario or something long-term, but we'll do our research and come back to the board.
Doesn't it also have to have a health permit and the fire department permit?
In most, if it goes through a special events permitting process, there's certain departments that have to take a look at what is effectively going to occur, so they would inspect the food truck, et cetera. But most of those food truck operations are inspected by the health department and have all the appropriate licenses to be able to operate and sell on the street, et cetera. So we'll look at what our code allows for and then provide some additional information and see if we can do it internally.
You have to start talking.
Thank you, guys.
It's the first time I've ever
We'll
heard
get
the city
back to you at
manager
another
beat
workshop.
Don.
That's Jimmy, he turned it up.
Perfect.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? All right, public comment is now closed. Oh, okay, go ahead.
Is it regarding the splash pad or a different matter?
Oh, anything but the splash pad. Okay,
Okay.
all right, public comments still closed. Next, we have additional budgetary items. The first item is the capital improvement plan, CIP.
Madam Mayor.
Excuse me, are you going to review this whole list and go down this list?
Yes,
Okay.
we are. Madam Mayor, members of the board, I would like for the finance director to kind of bring us to the point
this is
where
something on the last package.
effectively we are today.
didn't see it.
We've went through the operational departments. We have a couple of departments that we just need to hit on very quickly, and that is the city manager's department and then non-departmental expenditures. But the core of the discussion today will relate to the capital improvements plan. The finance director and staff have gone through the capital improvements plan and have made some modifications since the last document that was proffered to the board. And we made them changes predicated on what the affordability of some of these projects and initiatives are. The item that is listed separately, the splash pad repairs, we'll get into more details. Originally, when that item was brought before the board to consider as a fiscal year 2019 capital improvements project, we looked to see if the board was interested in having that discussion and possibly moving forward with that sooner rather than later. And I have a slideshow to show some of the challenges that we have at the existing structure. So I'm going to turn it over to our finance director to kind of bring us up to speed, and then we'll get into the capital improvements plan. One thing the board can consider, since the discussion on the splash pad is obviously an important discussion for those that are in the room and the board, you may want to consider discussing that item first and then getting into the more substantive, deeper conversations on your capital improvements plan.
I was going to suggest that too. So if that's all right with everyone else?
Before we go to that, I'd like to bring up something that I talked to the city manager about. And it was like after our last budget meeting, I was very kind of upset that, first off, we weren't getting paperwork ahead of time. We're getting it at the last minute here at the meetings. It really it's not fair to us. It doesn't give us time to really look into it and go through it. And then we end up spending an hour and a half talking about one subject. I think that was kind of ridiculous. Then after the meeting, I called some people in the budget committee, and I said, why have you guys not, briefed us on what you thought? And they said, we haven't got a lot of the stuff. We get it after you get it. And the whole idea behind having a budget committee was for them to look it over, for more eyes and ears on it, to talk about it before it even comes to us. And, we're just wasting these people's valuable time by, giving it to them after the fact, after we've already voted on it. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. I don't know what we need to do to get these things to the budget committee before it ever comes to us, so we're not, just wasting their time and wasting our time. That was the whole idea behind having these committees, that we would have people, the charter committee, the bid committee, the budget committee, to look over these things and come to give us their recommendations, so everything is not just based on the five of us making a decision. I wanted the input from these committees to kind of, tell us what they thought. If we accept it or if we don't, that's beside the point. It's just, I think it's, why aren't we using the committees that we fought so hard to get? And why isn't the finance director, giving this information to the budget committee for them to look over before it ever comes to us? And I think that's where we need to be, rather than, putting the cart before the horse, so to say. So I just want to kind of bring that up, put that for record.
I agree.
Can I make a comment? Before I was on the Board of Commissioners, I was a part of that the budget review committee. And I definitely feel that, yes, we did start off that way, okay? We started off where, I don't know where it is now, because I'm obviously not on it, but yes, we did start off where the ideas and the thoughts went through that committee, and then recommendations with Walt being in the attendance, recommendations were put together and brought to y'all. I remember that in the early part of it, so I don't know where it went wrong, but it was started out that way.
Have you seen anything?
I haven't seen anything. Like I said,
seen
I talked to someone on the budget committee after last meeting. They said, we haven't seen any of this stuff.
Madam Mayor, if I may, in my past experience, the relationship between the Budget Committee and the Board of Commissioners is unique in the sense that we have a situation here where we have copious amounts of committees, and most of your staff is the liaison for most of those committees. So, for instance, This week, you have Budget Committee, Charter Committee, and then you have folks that are, preparing agenda items for that as well as board meetings. So there is some challenges associated with that, but in my past experience in 2 agencies where we won the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award, it is not uncommon, and I've had finance advisory boards, it is not uncommon that they go through the budget process the same time concurrently that the board would effectively do that, and then proffer their recommendations in a letter to the board as part of the budget submittal that you get. There's, for a time there, and the finance director can correct me if I'm wrong, is that the budget committee and the board of commissioners were effectively on the same page on a lot of items and moving at the same path. There has been a deviation from their schedule because we didn't have quorum for one meeting, and so getting folks together to be able to come forward. Now, if it is I can assure you, next budget cycle will be more consistent with where I think the board wants to go, is that you want the board to provide you information real time versus at a budget hearing where effectively they present their perspective, their analysis on the budget document. If there is items that we have seen through the budget process that are concerns for the budget committee, we have brought those items before the board. So staff can certainly do a better job in making sure we communicate to you on real time as to how you want to receive information from the budget committee. But having it as a new committee, it's finding out all those nuances and intricacies of how the board wants to get information. So if you like to have staff effectively start the budget process with the committee, get it to a point where they're comfortable with all the nuances, and then bring that document to you with the inside of the budget committee, we can certainly do that. We've also scheduled for the budget committee representative to be here at the 31st meeting, and the 31st meeting is effectively where the board will adopt the millage rate for the purposes of the trim notice. And so at that time, we'll ask them to kind of bring you up to speed on certain items related to the budget process. But we can definitely make sure you get information, quicker. We can make sure that the information is thorough so you're not making public policy decisions here on the dais. And that's definitely not staff's response or staff's desire. And we can do better and we can be better.
And just to clarify too, the last budget meeting that we had, budget committee meeting we could not get a quorum. And then we tried to get a quorum, and maybe it's the summer months or vacation, we just had a problem. Now, after the last commission meeting, particularly after going over the new health change that we proposed and that was heard, I felt that the budget committee meeting had to be this week instead of waiting to the next meeting, which was scheduled for August 3rd. So I took action to ensure that there was a meeting this week, and we are meeting with them tomorrow at 10 o'clock. And I was able to get a quorum, but we've been fighting some vacations, and some of these committee members are on other committees. So I talked to the chairman, Mr. Pryor, and he said, Walt, I'm not really concerned about it because, quite frankly, this is our first year at this. And, we're trying to get through coordinating some of these things, and we're getting there. But I expressed the same concerns to him and as you did, and going forward, I think that we'll be on a better track. But again, sometimes it's a challenge to get a quorum. And like I said, the last meeting, we were set to go and to go over some of the health changes that we were going to give, and we could not get a quorum. But we are meeting tomorrow at 10:30 or 10 o'clock.
And certainly one of the things I would recommend is that moving forward, we look to engage our committees if it's conducive to what the committee members are willing to commit to, is that we do these committee appointments in the evening. It is better for us from staff because we're handling the day-to-day operational aspects and putting information together. So, having those meetings later on in the evening certainly I think would maybe assist in the flexibility and our ability to get folks and get that quorum and then provide the board ultimately what you'd like. So we've heard the board loud and clear. We can definitely make changes and improvements on the budget process because our goal is definitely to win the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. Since the inception of this organization, we haven't won that. We don't believe we'll be able to get it this year because there's probably about an additional 150 pages that Walt and I would have to add to the already probably double the size of what you're accustomed to budget document to get us to that point. But we do want it to be a communications and a spending plan and a tool to inform residents, visitors, and business owners of the financial health and the direction in which the organization is going. So that's something that long-term we aspire to obtain, but we can definitely improve the information and engagement with the Budget Committee.
I just want to say something too. We spent, and I actually thought it was a major direction or directive from the committee or the commission, is that we make a change for the healthcare. And I need to tell you that you heard that presentation at the last meeting last week, and I need to tell you that we invested a lot of time on that. It wasn't something that was easily looked into or researched. We had numerous communication back and forth. We knew that was a commitment and a directive from the commission, and we did spend a lot of time on that. I would like to give just a brief, I have not made that many changes since the last summary that you've received that I've passed out now, which is dated 7/25 at the top. We have incorporated, we have tweaked this a little bit. We have incorporated the health savings into this new picture, and with the savings and the 4% raise that the commission agreed to at the last meeting, we were able to put about $15,000 into an HSA account, and the commission did agree to allocate a possible total of $750 for that HSA account. We made a transfer from the building fund of $89,400, which would be accounting for the percentage of the time that a deputy is working to enforce the Florida building code, particularly on weekends. And we made some other tweaks to this. The bottom line, what we're looking at right now, particularly after the direction and some of the major changes that we made at the last meeting on the 17th, the general fund is now coming in with a total revenue of $10,055,085. The total expenditures at this point is $9,958,685. So there's a positive difference at this point of a little over $96,000. I know we're going to talk about the capital going forward today. There are some other tweaks that we want to make going forward that we may have to put some additional money into the finance department to increase the audit fees and to compensate for another single audit that might happen next year. And we may have to increase legal fees additionally as well. The other funds are also coming into balance and going forward are really showing good balance between revenue and expenditures, particularly the enterprise funds, although we do have some challenges in the sanitation area with the recycling contract. But everything looks positive at this point in time based on some of the directives that we received from the commission at the last meeting.
Director Pierce, if I may, with regards to the discussion that we had with the board at the previous meeting concerning the enterprise agreement with the fleet vehicles, is it safe to assume that that the numbers that are presented in front of the board this afternoon do not reflect what the potential savings would be associated with that? So there is some additional savings and some efficiencies that will be gained once the city is able to effectively execute that agreement.
Yeah, we're still, again, that's another new project that we're working on. That's an initiative of the city managers and it's taking up some time, but we think it's valuable time to research that. We've shared them some information that was provided by Dave Marsicano. So we're hoping to get some feedback from them in the next couple of weeks. So yes, there is some savings there potentially in the general fund budget going forward.
Any more discussion before we go forward?
No, Madam Mayor, at this particular moment, we'd like to go into the presentation on the splash pad, and I'll go ahead and load this up. Walt, I'm probably.
Yeah, I'm going to get out of this.
Ready. Madam Mayor, members of the board, this item before you this afternoon is to discuss the splash pad. In conversations with staff, it had been communicated that the splash pad had some issues that needed some immediate attention. And after discussions with the Parks and Recreation Director, it was contemplated that we can possibly look to fund the improvements out of this fiscal year money to address some of the concerns that we have because of the immediacy of the issues that I'll communicate here as part of the presentation. As you can see, the splash pad, we've experienced chlorine runoff and some staining of the brick pavers. First, of course, this results in a potential risk for slip and fall injuries. There's no drainage currently around the splash pad, so effectively the water sheets off the pavers and then gets into the intercoastal. And being a coastal community and having the desire to make sure we protect and preserve our waterways, we don't want chemicals or any byproducts or any items that are being washed from the splash pad to effectively make its way into the water. This is also causing for some concern that we have on the seawall. We're seeing some damage to the seawall with respect to the amount of flow and the amount of water that's actually sheeting from the splash pad. As you can see, that the chlorine water and the runoff having no drainage, it impacts the planters around the splash pad, and you're actually seeing where some settlement is occurring, where the actual level of the splash pad and the areas are kind of taking are not where they were once originally constructed. So there's some concerns with respect to that. Also, we want to look to effectively better maintain our chemicals and not having a drainage system where we can recycle the water, retreat the water, and then utilize it for the purpose of the splash pad. That's not occurring. So effectively, staff assumes that if we make some modifications and some improvements to the splash pad, that you would see some savings as it results in your consumption of water, your potable water usage. And that certainly is a big thing statewide, to make sure that potable water, we're not utilizing it in a sense that causes for waste. So anything that we can do to recycle and reuse water, that's something that we want to do as an organization. And then ultimately, we don't want to kill any of our plantings that are adjacent to the splash pad because of the chemicals that are sheeting off the side of the concrete there. This is some of the chlorine stainage that you're seeing on the brick pavers. And effectively, if you're there when the splash pad is active, you can see a lot of that water slowly making its way into the intercoastal, and provides for some concerns on multiple levels: environmental concerns, concerns on the issues with those brick pavers. Obviously, there's some sand underneath there, and if you have continuous water that pours over that area, there's a potential for some of those pavers to become unstable and not be consistent with what the ADA requires. So staff is looking at that, and definitely in the event, if it's the board's desires to make the improvements to that area, this issue would be mitigated with the changes that staff is proposing as part of the repairs. Currently, there's $30,000 that's proposed in the fiscal year budget, but when staff has looked at the splash pad, we anticipate the projected cost would be about $44,900. Obviously, with this type of project, until you put this out to bid and then you receive bids, that's when you really find out what the costs are associated with it. We've looked at different funding sources to be able to effectively make the improvements. We've looked at the opportunity to utilize monies in the Archibald Fund, and we've also looked at opportunities to potentially utilize money from the BP settlement. Staff, if it is the pleasure of the board, staff is more inclined to utilize some of the capital dollars that we find in the Archibald Fund that can effectively be used for parks and recreational amenities to cure this particular issue. So at this particular moment, staff is seeking direction from the board as to how you would like to proceed. The questions really stem, is the board inclined to support staff moving forward with this particular splash pad with some minor tweaks and modifications to include fencing, drainage, also some improvements to our chemical treatment process, and then look to do that with monies that are available in fiscal year 2018. We are not necessarily too inclined to recommend waiting till fiscal year 19, because if we look, the budget's adopted October 1. By the time you put out an RFP and get a firm on board, you're running into the holidays, and that slows up the process. So effectively, it would be staff's recommendation, if the board is so inclined, to move forward with said project today, utilizing fiscal year 2018 money. So staff stands prepared to answer any questions. I believe the recreation director can speak more on the usage area, the usage of the splash pad. And there's some things that we want to do, just better signage, making sure that, you know, kids and families are the ones utilizing the facilities. We've seen people have found it as an opportunity to wash their dogs and other things. So we're definitely going to be monitoring that a little bit better in subsequent months, depending on what the pleasure of the board is. So staff is seeking direction as to how you would like to proceed. Would you be more inclined to look at something this fiscal year or next fiscal year, or any other questions, comments, concerns, or perspectives you may have as it relates to the splash pad here in Rock Park?
I have a question. Aren't splash pads treated pretty much the same way as a pool? I mean, by the city's guidelines and of how you would put a pool in. A pool has a drain, splash pad should have a drain. And my question is, because I just got the permit here, I was going over, and it says all the plumbing's been approved. Well, how could it be installed without a drain, is my question.
There's two drain pieces in the center of it. So when it was initially installed, you pushed, the water went on, it drained to the center. As it has settled over time, like some of these buildings that we've looked at as well, it is, and with wind, the more we get wind, the more water's pushed in every direction. There's no outer drain. So our solution is to put an outer drain on it to get to capture all of the water, not just the one that goes in, but the fountain's closer to the edge. It'll pool up, and then because of the settling over time, it'll progressively wash out.
I was told there's no drain, so.
When you talk about a fence, where are we talking about putting the fence?
We've looked at two options. One of them would just encompass it's a kidney bean shape, so one would encompass just the shape of the splash pad. Another option is to extend it a little further out to allow for families to bring their strollers and their whatever else inside the fence. Ideally we'd like to have the parents and the children inside the same area at all times. And that for one is a safety thing. Additionally, we talk about recurring costs and maintenance. we would utilize this to create birthday party packages and stuff. So if if little Johnny wants to reserve the splash pad for an hour for his birthday and his parents want to throw a party there, we can do that. So we're not just doing it to throw money at something, we're doing it to also enhance the experience, ease of mind for the parents, and, a revenue opportunity as well.
I guess my question with the fence is, when I was out there the other day, and it was pretty busy, and a couple dolphins went by, all the kids ran right to the end of the wall. And that kind of scared me, watching them run to the end of the wall, if they didn't stop in time, if some other kid pushed them, if they got pushed by accident or slipped or whatever. So that's kind of why I'm asking where the fence would be.
Yeah, absolutely, and that, it scares us every day looking at it.
And I don't
so.
know if putting it just around the splash pad itself, if they would try to get out and go by the wall, just get a better look at the dolphins or whatever. I'm just kind of torn right there, which way to go on that.
Yeah, and the intention of the fence is to enclose the splash pad, and then there's the multiple of the circular benches out there, as well as that shade structure.
Mm-hmm.
So if we had all of that encompassed, it would, parents would have their stuff, they wouldn't have to leave their child inside to go step out and get their stuff. If it was, just a little bit larger footprint, it would bring everything in there, and we would be all set as far as safety and being able to keep the kids there. And we would do the same pool fence, treat it like a pool, as you said, the same pool fence where you can only open it from the outside, so no kids are, pulling it on the inside and sneaking out.
Thank you.
What would the fence look like?
We've looked at a lot of them. We're looking at, obviously it's got to hold up to the weather. We've looked at some aluminum style fence, just the black aluminum, nothing gaudy, or, we're not going to put a wood fence out there that'll splinter or whatever else, but we've got a little bit more research. I took the recommendation of the fence company that we had the first conversation with, and that was the metal fencing. So it would just be a similar pool fence, something that would hold up to the wind and the rain and all the elements.
I'm still not understanding why we need the fence, because the children can still go out, if they see dolphins, they'll go out and they'll run down anyway. I mean, what's it protecting them from?
I mean, the idea is just to keep it enclosed. If they're, basically do everything in our power to allow for them to be enclosed within that area and safely, there is, and I don't want to say that, it's all up to the parents, but there is an onus on the parents to make sure that children aren't running through the
Sure.
gates. So if we put the proper, mechanisms in place on the fence to make sure that it is not opened up from the inside, if you go to a public pool in an apartment, or not public pool, but an apartment complex pool, they've got those there for those exact reasons. You can only access from the outside, or you have to be tall enough to reach over and do it.
And Madam Mayor, if I may, I think from a liability perspective, your insurance carrier would prefer that you have some type of fence structure around any type of water features, just an extra barrier to ensure that if anyone runs off of there, because, you have the tendency, you can have a slip and fall just as easy as, another incident. So we look at it also from risk and liability standpoints. Even, we can place signage that says don't walk on a seawall, and invariably people do.
Don't wash your dog in the fountain.
Yeah.
I have a
Well,
question.
before we go any, well, go ahead.
I have a question, Jay. Do you know, or do you remember, or is it in the plans? Because I haven't read all of it. I've tried to read what we just got. But when the plans were being made for this, or the inception or whatever, or have you discussed it with not the fence people, but whoever you're discussing this with to make it, to improve it, to repair the splash pad? Has there ever been any discussion of requiring either an attendant at that splash pad or monitoring by some devices, monitoring of TV screens and stuff? Because I do remember when traveling in a lot of European countries, splash pads are extremely popular, especially when the heat, is like ours. And a lot of those places required, or two or three that I remember from Spain, did require an attendant be at that facility whenever there were kids around. And then I remember distinctly one where there was television monitoring. Someone had that thing hooked up so that you could see if a child was running out and the parent wasn't right around them. Or you could yeah, you could see if someone was washing their dog there, for instance, or doing something that they weren't supposed to, you would video it, and then you would be able to take attention to it. I'm just wondering, has any of that been thought of, or is that?
To be totally honest, this is an ongoing topic of conversation just within our county with other departments. And then also Hillsborough, we just visited, took my 1.5-year-old to the one in Tampa. And the huge fence, it's actually the splash pad playground and another area all encompassed within the fence with restrooms, everything. And they use motion sensors, just for the drainage. Not necessarily for safety, but there wasn't an attendee on staff. Some of them do charge to allow children in, which is not something that we would, the size of this splash pad wouldn't ever warrant that. But the ones with much larger, essentially it toes the line of a water park, they will charge. Then they do have attendees on site. It's something we can definitely look into further. As far as having a staff member just stand out there 24 hours, to make sure that people aren't doing things they're not supposed to, that gets into another budgetary conversation and just manpower. But it's definitely something we can look to with the proximity of the rec center. We can put processes in place where, hey, maybe 4, 5, 6 times a day we go out there and just do a quick survey of, all right, there's this many people here, there's nobody with their dogs, there's, just a quick survey and information that we have to track that. So we know the proper usage and safety is being done, utilized.
Jay, I just wanted to ask you, hi. Is this set on a timer, or is it something that goes continuously all day long?
It has a button. You push the button and it runs for 15 minutes.
Okay.
So if you push the button, what we get a lot of is folks will walk by and they see the button, they push the button. It's just human nature, I guess. But they'll push it and they'll walk off and we'll get to watch the splash pad. We've discussed adjusting that as well, probably to shorter, but we'll have to see. If we put the drain in, it's a lot less of a worry as far as the time goes, but it is at 15 minutes.
So it is available for anyone to go there and use it at any time then?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
I think now would be an appropriate time to open the floor for public comment. Yes. And once again, I'd like to welcome, I see some more children arrived, so nice to have you here.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, Commissioners, and city staff. I'm Bill Carnes, 19424 Gulf Boulevard. I am the president of Rock Park, Inc. It is a 501c3 nonprofit. We were blessed back in, I believe, 2014, when there was, oh, I'm sorry. Start over or start from here? So we were blessed back in 2014 when Mayor and Commission passed a resolution for Rock Park. It was a design concept that my family had come up with from viewing a similar facility in Ocala, Florida. And in that resolution, we agreed to, the city had $200,000 in their budget for the landscape of the entire city center, which was very minimalistic and had shell pathways and that. And we agreed at that time with the city that the city would contribute $150,000 toward the landscape, so we saved the city $50,000 at that time. And we went out and worked with the architectural firm that had designed the city hall. They came up with the design for the park. We went out and raised over $1.5 million to date through various families that had lost a child, from all the local business communities. And we were able to do some great things here at Rock Park. When that splash pad was installed, there are 2 drains. I just wanted to clarify that. There are 2 drains that are in the center that are pitched. The main issue that we have over there is it sits out on the point. And anyone that's walked along there, there's a lot of wind-driven, a lot of wind that comes east, west, north, south. And it does take that that water that's being, shot up in the air, and it spreads it outside of that surface. So the purpose of this drain was to recapture that water, because it doesn't go to the center of the drain as the wind grabs it, and that'll save the city quite a bit of money in their water bill, because the water runs out, runs down. Obviously, the liability side of that issue, with someone slipping and falling, would eliminate the majority of that. So we think it's a wonderful time and opportunity to get this done. We've been working with Jay and his staff to get some contractors to do what they did when we did the park, and that's to do some in-kind donations to help lower the cost. And I guess I'm out of time. I'm sorry about that.
Is it on? Larry Roloffs, 399 150th Avenue. It's not on yet?
Just put it up to your mouth.
I'm sorry?
Put it up to your mouth.
Okay, is that better? Larry Roloffs, 399 150th Avenue, Madeira Beach. I've only had 24 hours to understand the situation with the splash pad. One thing the city manager mentioned was the fact that we would like to recycle the water. I didn't understand if that meant recycle it back to the splash pad or recycle it and filter it back to watering the grass. Splash pad, okay. The other thing I heard was a comment about a fence. I wasn't clear if that included a gate. Okay, it is. Because I know around our community, our gate has to have a knob at a certain height to prevent children from entering the pool area. And I think it's like 52 inches high. So just a couple of comments. My other comment has to do with the fact that Rock Park is very dear to me. I lost a grandson a couple years ago, and we have a memorial out there. And I'm hoping that any review of Rock Park does not lead to any kind of a degradation of the park. We hope it stays as beautiful and clean as it is now. And that would be very, very personal for me if any further efforts were looking at that park to remove it or not to maintain it. So that would be my last comment. Thank you very much.
Anyone else?
Hello there. As a resident of Reddington Beach for the past...
Can you state your name and address?
I'm sorry, Erin. This is my first one. So Erin Downs, 16466 Reddington Drive. And as a resident here for the past, in the area for the past 15 years, I would hope that we could have the funds to keep the splash pad in effect. The fence is a great idea. I've been taking my kids. These are not all my kids. I'm babysitting today. So I would hope that we would maintain those funds to keep the splash pad. I have taken both of my kids to the splash pad since it started. How long has it been in, Jay? I don't know. I don't know. So, and every day after school, I would take my daughter, and not my son because he was in first grade, but I hope that we can keep it alive because there's many folks in the area that don't have a pool. So this is nice for the young kids to cool off during the summertime, which it's summer here 90% of the year. And even as a parent with a pool, we still use it quite often. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm used to a microphone. Good afternoon, Mrs. Black and council members, Mayor. I'm very honored and very humbled to speak with you today. My name is Father Rick Pilger. I'm a pastor at Blessed Sacrament Church, 11565 66th Avenue North in Seminole. And I just want to share some experiences with you about Rock Park and also the splash pad. August 30th, 2009, my nephew was killed in a car accident. And he was out of town. We didn't know when we would get to see him. It was almost a week before we got to see him because it was out of state. And we finally saw him as my sister and brother-in-law, when they turned around from the casket, I never saw such horror on a person's face. And 5 years ago, February 25th, 2013, I was called to the home of Bill and Diane Carnes, and the moment I saw their face when they opened the door, I saw the same horror. And what happened following those two events, those two accidents, is very interesting. Tom went into a very deep, dark depression, and Bill used his grief, and Diane used their grief to build a facility for parents and families to heal from their tragic losses. Well, 2 years ago, when my sister and brother-in-law were visiting, I introduced them to Bill here at Rock Park, and it was the first time, after they shared their stories, it was the first time I saw light in my brother-in-law's eyes. He walked around by the butterfly garden and looked out over the ballpark and said, "This is where we want his memorial." So what I want to share with you is that Craig, he was a coach, and he coached for many, many years. At his funeral, there were it went on for the evening before, there was 6.5 hours that people visited him, and it took an hour and a half for people to sit in the church before they could get in line. So much was he loved. On a number of occasions, I've asked Bill Carnes to speak to parents who have lost a child in death. The very same, it's amazing, the very same thing when they get done walking around and explaining things to them and sharing their stories, they say this on the way home: "This is the first time I found peace." Compassion to suffer with someone is so healing. And this time, this is very true about Rock Park, that there's a light shining above it. I want to thank you so much, and I'm done. Thank you. God bless you.
Deborah Rogowski, 17117 Gulf Boulevard. I just wanted to say that I think the splash pad deserves to be repaired and maintained. I know it was a gift of Rock Park. Crossbridge Church, that I'm a member of, we donated, my husband and I donated. It's so important to have this, and I think the city really should maintain it because it was a gift. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Laura Barnett, and I live at 104 161st Avenue in Redington Beach. I have 4 children, and 3 of whom are here today. We love the splash pad. We come here when we're home at least once a week. I think it's a fantastic addition to the park. We don't have a pool ourselves, and when we go to the beach, the sand is an issue for the very small children. At the splash pad, you don't have sand. It's wonderful footing for the kids. I think a fence, I've been on and off about a fence. The first time I ever went there, I thought, oh, my kids are really, really small. A fence would be nice. And I do agree with for the little kids, but as a parent, I'm always watching the kids no matter what. With a fence with one exit, I feel like it would be easier to watch them, but I don't feel like it would be a necessary addition if you were worried about, kids going off the edge. You do have the pathway, so that's a risk anyway. And if you had the extra drain, then it wouldn't be slippery, and that wouldn't be an issue for them sliding or, going farther than you'd want them to go. I have also thought that as far as the edge is concerned, if you had maybe those rubber bumpers or a lifesaver every 30 feet or yards on the pathway over the edge, that might be something in case someone did fall in so you don't have to jump in after them. But I just want to say I love the splash pad. I think if it could get fixed you know, with this fiscal year's budget, it would be amazing because of the heat right now, and the sooner it's get fixed, you know, the better. And I do agree with reducing the environmental impact with recycling the water. I think that's very important, and I am surprised it wasn't considered initially when it was installed, but I guess you live and learn, and hopefully it will be able to be repaired and we can continue to use it for a long time. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dorothy Leonti, and I'm at 16124 Gulf Boulevard. And I have my grandchildren that I take care of 5 days a week, and I utilize that park. It's beautiful, it's relaxing, and I would love to see it be repaired and stayed open. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak? Public comment is now closed. Thank you for coming.
Mayor, may I make a comment? I would just like to say that I
Room, right?
certainly appreciate the concerns and the comments from some residents of Madeira Beach and many non-residents of Madeira Beach about the splash pad. I do feel uncomfortable, I guess, that I think our social media has triggered so many emotional responses on this particular issue. I believe that there might even be some former, Madeira Beach staffers might have triggered the onslaughts of emails that I received. I don't know if you all received them or not, but I know I received a lot of them on this issue. And I would just like to, I guess, maybe remind us all that the pad was built as part of a bigger picture, okay? The pad was built as part of a City Hall complex. And since 2015, when the project was completed, I think it was 2015, when the big opening event, many, many issues have been brought up about the design and structure of the entire complex. Remember a couple weeks ago, we all talked about $75,000 needed for the driveway of the firehouse, and also another $50,000 to $100,000 may be required on our building here that we were told would probably never need maintenance, okay? It would be maintenance free. But I guess and here we are today facing another issue, that of the splash pad, requiring maybe $44,000, and that's just an estimate. So it certainly could be more than that, okay? And I guess we have to make tough decisions on this splash pad, as many other issues regarding the city. And I think I'd like to have more time to think about it, okay? I think that it's not something, obviously it's the workshops and we're not going to vote on it anyway, but I'd like to put it on, considering the additional information that we got today just prior to the meeting, okay? We did get a bunch of information. I think we should put it on put it back to workshop meeting, or put it back to something that we can talk about it more before it goes to a regular commission meeting for a vote. Does anybody agree?
I think they're just looking to put it on do we want to approve it for the budget?
Well,
So that Walker put it in there, and I know you're not comfortable with it.
Right, I'm not, so, in light of my remarks,
I think it's very important that we do it. I think we need to do it in this fiscal year, and I'm sitting here looking at it.
I can't hear all the discussion. Can we talk louder,
I agree it needs to be done. I think it needs to be done in this fiscal year. And I'm looking at the projected 2019 projects and stuff like that. And I'm sitting here and I'm looking at $95,000 for Archibald Park, between the restrooms and the bathhouse. To me, I'd rather delay that and get this fixed. I think this is very, very important for our residents. The day I was there, I think the fence is very important, and I'll tell you why. I know the one lady said, well, I watch my kids while they're there, but I was watching other ladies on their cell phone and not paying attention to their children. And when somebody yelled dolphin, the kids were running and towards the wall and stuff like that. So I think the fence is very important. And like it was slippery because of the water running across the pavers and stuff like that. And I had my grandkids there at the same time. I think this is very important to fix and fix right, to be safe. I think if it's not safe, you close it down. But I think it's very important that we make it, and we make it safe at this point for everyone. To me, it's a very, very, very important. And I think the fence is important. I think the drainage issue is important. So I think the sooner we move on it, I think the better. And like the city manager brought up, let's try to get it done in this fiscal year versus next fiscal year.
The problem with this is you're looking at the funds that are in 2019. The funds of Archibald, is there even any balance in the funds of Archibald this year?
If I'm not mistaken, there's $267,000 that are in the fund balance for the Archibald Fund.
I see a restricted fund balance.
Yeah, it's a restricted fund balance for the purposes of recreational
Oh,
amenities.
so that's in that 310 that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And actually, I would, if it is the decision of the commission to do this, I would recommend it done this year.
I agree with John. I think, well, number one, it's Remember Our Children, Rock Park. And that's probably one of the best features of Rock Park is the splash park for the children. And I think it really needs to be repaired. My question is the $44,000 include the fence?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And I'm sort of on the fence, not the fence.
Pun intended.
Sorry about that. It seems to me it'd be a deterrent to the way it looks, but I think perhaps safety is more important. So if we can get something that fits in and it doesn't look fancy.
Doesn't look like a fence.
Jay, let me ask you.
Put one of those invisible fences that shocks them.
Yeah. But definitely, I think it's something that we need to repair and go forward.
Are you talking about putting like a little lip up, a wall, a little tiny wall so the water doesn't go past that and then do the fence plus that?
There's a couple of options. From what I've seen in the discussions I've had as far as the drains are concerned, there's two types of drains we can do. One of them would be a custom fit molded one that was for the shape of that splash pad. They would come out, measure it, and it would come in segments and just basically plug in like Legos. Another one is not as flexible as that and would require a couple minor adjustments of things, but it would just be more of a rectangular shape. But the fencing would then, we're gonna have to have a conversation between the folks installing the drain, installing the fence, all that stuff, just to make sure that we're doing it in the right order. I don't want us to put the drain in and then have to put in the fence afterwards and remove something. But one of the shapes would actually attach just right along the edge of the splash pad. It would be pretty much, it drops off, it would be right there, and then the drain would be just outside the fence. And then another option is they talked about sinking actually just cement blocks that would hold the fence into place. So it just depends on what we decide with, and then what type of drain we end up with as well.
I agree with what Mr. Karn said. We're never going to keep all the water off the pavers. When that goes, they go up and the wind blowing, some of it's always going to go out there. So we're never going to be able to stop it 100% from going out there.
Right, and there's going to be, with the pavers and other aspects of the parks, we've got to trim the bushes around there and all that stuff. That's going to help. It's going to keep, anytime we get the ground overly wet, we have a lot of maintenance issues. We're driving vehicles, footprints, we're stepping mud holes everywhere. So, any sort of limitation on this is going to help. And then, capturing that water, recycling the water is going to help us with our water costs, our chemical costs. All in all, it's going to save us money. There's not going to be like a payoff point savings-wise, but there'll be a noticeable savings as far as, the water is concerned, so.
Thank you.
I have to agree with Commissioner Duthert. I think we should go ahead and get it done this fiscal year. I'm sure we can find the funds that we need, so that's not going to be a problem. So the sooner we get it done, the better. So this year is my aim to get it done this year, this fiscal year.
So we just need to put it on the next BOC
Mayor,
meeting and vote on it.
I think that
Just needs, well, yeah.
the preliminary, I think it's so preliminary, I don't think it's realistic then to leave that $44,000 in. I think it could be a whole lot more based on the preliminary, just basic information that our recreation director has given us. It could be $80,000. We don't know. So I think that was really my focus, okay, was that the 44 to be put into the budget, for it it just doesn't seem to me to be realistic. I'm not against it. I'm just saying that I don't think that that's realistic.
Actually, what's going to happen is that 44 is going to come out of the 2019 budget. It won't even be there. It's going to basically get moved into the 2018 budget. They're going to have to go out and do an RFP, and that whole process, then bring it back to us and say, this is what we've come up with. Whether it ends up at 44 or 80 or whatever the dollar
It'll
amount
come
is,
back.
Yeah.
that's where it goes.
That is
So
correct.
it'll be in this year's budget, not
That is
Right.
correct. Commissioner Oakley is absolutely correct. What would happen is staff would move forward with the drafting of an RFP. We would solicit input from vendors, and then we would then rank the vendors and bring the costs back, and you as the board would effectively see all the costs associated with the improvements that we're proposing, and then ultimately, assuming that's consistent with the budget number, then you as the board could either approve or deny, but you will have an opportunity to see the item at least once, if not twice again.
And if
So
it turns
there's
in-
$310,000 in the reserve of Archibald Park, so the money's there.
Which is fine, and I'm not arguing that at all. I'm not really concerned with that as much as I am that if I had $44,000 or $60,000 in a pot waiting to be spent, and I wanted to make sure I was getting the best bang for my buck on repairing the splash pad,
Well, that's why
wanted to make sure that it's not another
we're not
project.
associating a dollar amount with it. All we're asking them
Okay.
to do is go out this year, do an RFQ or RFP, whichever one it is, and
then we'll decide.
then they start from there, and then we're gonna find out. We have
Okay.
no dollar
Those are
amount
just my-
associated with
yeah,
it at
they're
this
just my
point.
concerns, my thoughts, okay.
Yeah, basically what the board is giving us consensus is to proceed forward to obtain the data and the information to get the hard numbers, and then at that time, we would bring an item to the board to effectively approve or deny the commencement of construction or reconstruction of some elements associated with the splash pad. So you will have an opportunity to see what the proposed fixtures will look like, what the fence will look like, and the cost associated with that. So you'll have an opportunity to see that, and probably I think the board would want to see it at a workshop and then ultimately come back before you for ratification. So you'll probably at least take 2 bites, if not 3, at the apple. So, but we'll get it. We want to move with it sooner rather than later to get
if the
the
decision is-
information going.
And if the decision is made before September, what would happen is we would make sure that the dollars were there, we would process a purchase order, and if nothing went against the purchase order, that purchase order for those dollars would roll into next year.
Right,
Okay.
okay. I'm good with that.
I think we have a consensus then?
Yep.
Yeah.
Where, oh,
Can I make one additional comment, please?
go ahead.
I just wanted to
Name and
make one
address,
addition.
just for the record.
Pardon me?
Name and address for the
Oh,
record.
thank you.
Like we don't-
Bill Carnes, 19424 Gulf Boulevard, Indian Shores. I just wanted to add one additional comment, and I appreciate Madam Mayor and Commissioner Weinstein and Commissioner Oakley for being at the Rock the Barriers event a couple weeks ago, along with the city manager and Kurt, the public information specialist that could attend. It was a very successful event. It was a beautiful event. We were successful in raising $5,000 at that event. Not only did we put $1 million worth of smiles on all these children's faces, but we did raise $5,000, and Rock Park would like the opportunity to present the city with a check for $5,000 from that event, and would graciously ask that we could do additional events like that in the park to raise money so you can use those funds for the park and for whatever improvements need to be done. And again, I want to thank you all very much for giving us the opportunity to work with city and staff and host such a wonderful event, and we look forward to many more. So thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. All right, going forward, we are now going to AA, Capital Improvement Plan.
Madam Mayor, if I can just recommend something, also, by the way, on this capital budget information that we provided, we have made no changes in this since the last meeting. So when we hand out this information to you, we're just giving it to you because we didn't know you had it. So it's the same information that you had last week.
Okay.
And if I can just, with the city manager's approval, if I can make a recommendation that we home in, so if we can attack this strategically, if we can home in on the dollars that are earmarked specifically for the BP funds, that would be easier for me if we could do that first. But it's just a suggestion. If you want me to list those, again, the allocation for the BP settlement money is, the amount total committed that's in the reserve right now is $452,123. And what's being suggested or recommended is a total of presently $321,585. And what those include is John Pass Village improvements, $125,000, pilings that need to be replaced of $31,585, municipal complex repair and maintenance of $50,000, firehouse asphalt repair to concrete, $75,000, and then military court of honor, $40,000. The dollars remaining, with all those allocations that would be left, if all of those would be approved, would be $130,538 that would be left in that bucket of funds earmarked for the BP monies.
Can we take these one by one?
Yep.
Johns Pass Village Improvement Plan. I don't see that we need to give Johns Pass $125,000. I could see maybe going 50 because you were talking about doing some small cosmetic things, the trash cans, the benches, things of that nature. But until we get the survey back of who owns what property in Johns Pass, I don't feel comfortable doing very much of anything down there until we find out who owns what.
If it's the board's desires to effectively modify that, we've got some anticipated costs of about probably about $20,000 to make restroom improvements. So if there's a modification to that, at least if the number is $50,000, staff would just request maybe $75,000 so we can be able to address those restroom issues because we have some concerns that we'd like to be able to make some improvements.
Well, I mean, out of the 50, you got 30,000 to buy trash cans and benches and the smaller ancillary things that are going to go on down there. I mean,
you know, those types of the commercial grade trash cans and those benches, they are quite expensive, and you know, conceivably it does sound like a lot of money, but one of the things that staff would like to do is whatever number the board collectively comes with it, whether it's 75,000 or 100,000, what we would like to do is put together a plan and really line item out exactly what it is and bring that back before you for the purposes of improvements. I don't want to bring stuff that's piecemeal and say, you know, we're going to buy everything under 15,000. I'd like to map out and articulate a plan so you can see exactly what that looks like. But if the board can hone in specifically on the amount, then staff can go put pen to paper and provide you some more specific details.
I'm totally for a plan. I would rather see a plan to put together than to say, I'm going to give you $150,000 or $125,000 and you work what you want to do into that plan. Come to us with a plan of what needs to be done in Johns Pass, but we still need that survey to start with.
Well, and you're gonna get all that, as all you're basically doing is taking the monies from BP, shifting it into an account that says it is earmarked for expenditures in that area, and then we as staff bring that forward, and the money does not get released until the board effectively adopts the components and the elements of the plan. So basically, we're looking to see if the board's appetite is to move it, to say, okay, this is gonna be earmarked, and then staff come forward with a plan to say, we've got 100,000, we've got 50,000, whatever that is, to be able to accomplish what the board wants to see accomplished in the Johns Pass Village and Johns Pass area. So,
Well, I'm not for giving 125,000 on a plan that is non-existent at this point.
When we were talking about Johns Pass, I got a quick question in regards to something that Commissioner Weinstein brought up before, and that is moving the kiosk for the chamber, be whatever chamber it is, down closer to the restroom area. That's what you were talking, wasn't it, Debbie?
It's over on the other side of.
Right, it was actually,
Planet.
the idea was, tearing down the current structure and just making it for shade and benches. And yes, then if there is something to be moved, or if we want to move give someone the opportunity to rent, either of the chambers or some other agency, that be done in Johns Pass,
But moved down from where it currently is, further north, correct?
Right, exactly.
Moved up
Adjacent
and
to
down.
adjacent to that Fantasy Landing building that's owned by the city.
Okay, I have a,
But that's not included in any of this.
But that's not included in anything.
Any of
that
this.
we're-
It's just a dream.
I think something we need to reconsider though, because FEMA put the chambers there. We cannot tear it down. If we tear it down, we can't replace it. That's
We
FEMA.
didn't want to replace it.
We can't,
Well, you can't replace it on the side of the Fantasy Planet. If we tear it down, we can't turn around and build another one. We'd have to build it, 20 feet up in the air? And what tourist is going to want to walk a couple flights of stairs to get information? So, we can't. The only way it could be replaced by FEMA is if it's flooded. And that's the only other way we can do it. But if
But
we tear
replace
it
it.
down, it's gone. It's gone.
And that's just a
it.
thought, but I think the real problem or the real idea is, and I think, remember this from the beginning, is that we can't re-rent. We can't rent or lease the current building like it is without going through that
Right.
ADA compliant, right? That's the whole
That's-
issue right
it would-
now.
that'd be
The
only
other's
we could
just
do
my
is
dream.
try and repair it, but to tear
Right.
it down, we can't do that because we would lose it altogether.
Tear it down.
Tear it down.
We need the
Just
chambers.
leave a structure for some shade and a
Right,
couple
but that's
benches
still not
like the bus
included in
station
this,
used to be.
right, but it's still not included in this, in what we're talking about, Johns Pass Village improvements with the $125,000.
Right. That doesn't have anything to do with
I
that.
I know, it doesn't have anything to do with it.
and it also, Madam Mayor, if I may, also was the desire of the board to have staff effectively meet with the local businesses in that area and get their perspective. The Merchants Association meeting was canceled last month. There is one August 1st. I plan on attending that meeting and then seeing if we can schedule a meeting with them in the middle of August to get their perspective and then bring back to you what the comments were from the business community. Staff has gone forward and sketched out, if we were to effectively bring that building into compliance, what it would look like. If it is the desire of the board to look at more of a pavilion shade structure type of situation, we can easily have those drawings sketched up for you to consider. But if it is the board's desire to discuss that, staff would just ask that allow for us to have the conversation with the local business community and get their input on that as well.
Well, I think they need to understand that, it's not like we just take all the money out of the parking meters in Johns Pass. This is the budget or not budget, this is expenses for Johns Pass. And we spend almost $99,000 a year in contracts for the lawn maintenance down there. The electrical for the streetlights. We spend $40,000 a year in hauling their garbage out. It's their garbage that gets put in our trash cans that are on the street. So, that's a lot of money down there, $100,000 that we're already putting in a year. And I just want them to understand, it's not like we don't do anything.
Well, we've done lighting and we've done other things there too as well.
Yeah, there's the lighting, there's the waste, the general insurance for it, water.
Pilings.
That's for the building. Well, the pilings are a little different. They're on that other, they're not actually in there. Because once they were in, there's really no maintenance on until now, and that
Right,
that whole
okay.
other thing came up.
Well, I
So-
just think personally it'd be much better to just get rid of the building rather than spend money making it ADA compliant. Make a nice park, maybe put a few little boxes out there with maps and some, touristy things. I think most people, when they get to John's Pass Village, they know what they want to see. They already looked at maps, they know what they're doing. And then we also don't have to go through this every couple of years about who's going to use it, put chamber against chamber, and then, just.
Right, I mean, it's not like we ever made any money off it,
Right.
$1 a year, and, it's just not worth the headache for me.
I agree.
Let's go back to the $125,000. Did you
Okay.
want to, because it doesn't even include the kiosk or anything like
Right,
that, so let's just forget that.
Right.
But did you want to go down through those other 4 items, or you want us to all?
No, I would go 50,000 max for the fund for John's Pass at this point.
So is that the consensus to make that from 125 to 50?
Let's hear what the rest of
Well-
the board members have to say.
I want to leave it at 125 for the improvements down there. Like I said, this is the main tourist attraction we have here in Pinellas County.
Come back with a plan.
Well, we can do a plan. They can come back with a plan, and we can take a look at it, but I mean, just to flat out tell them, no, we're only going to give you $50,000. We can take a look at a plan, there's no problem with that.
But remember, we're not going to give anybody we're not giving them the money. I'd almost rather it be called, instead of John's Pass Village Improvements, call it District 1 Improvements, because District 1, well, it's true. I mean, you're talking about John's Pass Beach, John's Pass Park. You're talking about that whole area around there. It's not just John's Pass Village. It's, that whole commercial area. And I guess to earmark it, if we're looking to earmark it, I'd stay with the 50, to actually earmark it. Can we change the name and call it the District 1?
Whatever the pleasure of the board is.
Well,
Maybe that makes it less
Hey,
palatable.
Madam Mayor.
I'm just kidding.
Madam Mayor and Commissioners, Madam Mayor and Commissioners, just so we're clear, these first 2 items, if they're approved, they would be we would put them in the capital section of the Johns Pass Department.
Right. And,
Well-
and it doesn't commit to any expenditures, because honestly, if the board says it's $50,000, we can draft a $50,000 plan. If the board says $125,000, we can draft a $125,000 plan. We just have to get what the board's appetite and where you effectively want to be, because we don't want to have staff go through the process of drafting a $125,000 plan and people see this $125,000 plan and then effectively goes through to $50,000. So we want to see where the board is on the amount, and then we can draft the corresponding and prioritize. And maybe the board effectively says, you know what, we're going to do a Johns Pass Village improvement plan to where every year for the next couple of years, we're going to allocate some money, and it's going to be a 3-year plan to accomplish X, Y, and Z. This year, maybe 50,000. Next year, you may say, Jonathan, bring back something 75,000, or bring something back 50,000, or effectively get to the same point. But it's just definitely which direction the board wants to go, so staff can put pen to paper.
But it's the more money you end up getting there, it's the bigger the wish list that you want to make it. And that's what I didn't want it to become a wish list. I want it to become what we really need down there. But how do you really know until the survey is done? You've got to know who owns what down there. I mean, there's that whole boardwalk that's boards, and then there's brick. Who owns that stretch through there? We've got to know what we own before we go in and try to beautify or do anything to what is down there.
I definitely agree with that, especially about those pilings. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I would think if for the purposes of allocating and making sure that you've made an allocation, some kind of an allocation just to identify it, then I would think the combination of both of those should not exceed, the combination of the 102 pilings and the improvements should not exceed $75,000.
Well, the piling thing,
Parks aren't in there, though.
I'm saying
Go back
together.
to the 125, and then I wanted 50, and you wanted whatever. Go back to that line item, and then we'll address the piling thing in a second, because that's a different line.
I
Oh.
would say it should be somewhere between 75 and 100,000.
I don't agree.
For the Johns Pass improvements, is what you're saying?
You know, at this point, I don't want I don't think we should want a list of what they're gonna do at Johns Pass. Well, we're gonna spend 10,000 on this and 6,000 on that, 13,000 on that, you know, because then we're getting into
Can you
micromanaging.
get your mic up there?
We're getting into micromanaging the city's business, you know, and I don't think that is our job. You know, I think we need to say, okay, it's 50, 75, 100,000, and let them use their best discretion at, them being the city, use their best discretion at what really needs to be done. Then if something additionally comes along that they need additional money, you know, something major happens, they feel that it's either a safety or a health issue that needs to be addressed right away, then I think they need to come back to us and say, hey, we need additional money because we spent our money and this is a safety or a health issue. That's kind of the way I look at this whole thing, but I don't want a list of, you know, of every little thing they're gonna do. I just don't, I don't think that's our
That's why I'm
job.
putting the 50 in there, to give them, let them do it, the little stuff.
But yeah, I think I go with Maggie more, like 75 to 100 versus the 50. I just don't like, they just, you know, 50 is, I don't want to say this.
It's minimal. I mean,
It's chump change
Yeah,
compared,
it is.
compared
You're right.
to our budget, you know?
You're right.
Well, I'm not,
So
I don't.
that's kind of where I'm coming at from this thing. You know, I don't want to get into the business of telling the city, you know, hey, you need to be sweeping the street or you need to be doing this. Or, you know, that's not our job, you know, and I don't want to get into the weeds on these things. Thank you.
So where are we?
I'm at 50, Debbie's at 50, he's with you. And she's
I think
at
we
the
make a
top.
recommendation that we, you know, we go with 75 or 100. I don't care which one. And
I
let's go
think
from there.
75 would be a compromise.
And
Can
then,
we
you know,
agree that?
Nancy, I see you shaking your head. Speak.
No.
Don't just shake your head, speak.
No, I feel like, you know, if we're gonna do it, let's do it. You know, let's do the 125 and get it taken care of. Why are we nickel and diming every little thing that comes across? You know, that's ridiculous. Let's give them the 125. That's the way I look at it, and I'm not changing my mind. That's it.
Neither am I.
What's the consensus anyway? I mean, my idea of a consensus would be, I'd go with the 75 with Maggie and John, and that's the
75,
consensus.
That's it.
That's the consensus.
Okay.
Put it on there.
So,
Okay.
And we'll go more than that.
And just
but we-
for clarification, it's 75 to include the piling?
Filing's separate
no.
issue.
Oh, separate issue.
Filing's separate issue.
Okay.
So that's 75 for the John Pass Village improvements.
Correct.
We're
Right.
reducing that from 125,000
To
to
75.
75,000.
Right.
You know, we could use the additional money to do the survey or whatever you want to call it, to find out what we own and what everybody else owns. You know, so.
I would definitely go with that.
Good.
So, you know. if
But
we
I
need-
want that started this year. I'd rather have that started this year in this year's budget than next year's.
You got it.
Who owns
Problem.
what?
Yeah, we need a
Yeah.
survey
How difficult
of
is that,
John's
though?
Pass.
Yeah, we're
An
getting.
actual survey.
An actual
Meets-
survey done.
Meets and bounds survey.
Well,
Right,
one
okay.
more time, if we go forward and becomes a purchase order and nothing gets spent, that would just roll over into 2019.
Correct.
Okay, the piling situation is in the same boat. Until we survey every one of those pilings, I want to take the whole 31,000, because that had pilings that I'm not convinced were ours in it.
The piling, the number there, obviously that's one entire project, so that would not be something that would have to come back before the board, and we would not bring that back before the board until we get that meets and bounds surveys to effectively say, hey, these are those things. So the money,
Right.
and the money would affect, and Walt, correct me if I'm wrong, the money would stay in the BP account until we effectively bring the expenditure request to pull that money, that $31,000 to effectuate the capital purchase for the
Well,
the
it
pilot.
is a little tricky the way it's set up right now. The way the revenue is set up, I've got the total amount in revenue as a revenue line item in this budget coming out of revenue, and then the matching expenditure allocations that go against it. So that's the way it's set up.
But it's coming in as revenue from the BP settlement for the purposes of this project. If this project doesn't come to life, effectively, it would reverse back to the funding stream
Yes.
that it was in.
Right.
So
I'm only trying to explain the way it's set up
it's-
right now.
It's for
Right, but
budgeting
why-
purposes.
I don't understand why we just can't just take it off the table until we get the survey and then figure out where we are and figure out exactly how much it's gonna cost. We can still pull it from the BP fund to pay for it.
Because as part of communicating to the public the budget, we want them to see all the anticipated projects as to what's happening. If we don't do it this way, effectively, we would have to come back and it would not be in your CIP. So the public wouldn't see that project, it would be an added project. So it's more so for, well, accounting one, but two, to communicate, these are the projects that if everything goes as planned, we anticipate to deliver on it in the fiscal year 19. So that-
We would like to have the revenue equal the expenditures
Right.
on this issue.
Could we put it down such as, up to the 31,585 for city-owned pilings
Only.
only? Can we address it that way? And then
Absolutely.
that way, you know, it's in there, and we're saying, if it's city-owned, we'll take care of it, it's not,
Yeah.
we don't.
And
But this
the
can't
stat.
happen until survey.
Right, and the statute actually prohibits you from utilizing public money on private property unless it is for the purposes of a disaster mitigation strategy or it has a defined public benefit or public purpose. So from our standpoint, we would address our pilings and we would definitely make sure as part of that attachment, the meet and bound survey, and staff has actually went out there and marked the pilings, but we're gonna double check again to make sure that effectively when we go out there to do the work, we're doing the work on our pilings. So-
But this would remain in John's past department, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And if we can put in Perrin, Walt, city-owned pilings.
Okay. And if it's okay with the commission, I would just like to round that number to be whole to, and no big deal, just 31,600.
I don't even think it's gonna be that. I think it's gonna be closer, less than 30,
Okay. But just so we can get the allocation correct, 31,600.
whatever.
That's fine.
And 30 cents.
31 cents.
31.
So the next item would be the municipal complex repair and maintenance, and I guess with the city manager's approval, I guess the mindset here is that as we see deficiencies, which we see almost every day with this building, this money would be allocated to make those necessary repairs as we see them. There's actually some paint touch-ups that need to be done, even in here, in the chambers, that haven't been done yet.
So we kind of talked about this before, that this 50,000, if we do it on a yearly basis, is just a maintenance fee to fix things as we go along, as we see things. If we use it, we use it. If we don't, we don't.
What we would do is recommend if we utilize $5,000 of it, it would just roll into the next year and
Yeah.
create that perpetual care fund.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what. we
So are
talked
you,
about.
are you looking at jump-starting this fund with BP money? Because at some point, the BP money's gonna dry up and you're gonna have to look at general fund or something to fund this maintenance program.
Right, yeah. So this is, our hope is to be able to utilize maybe a third, if not less of that money, but to effectively start the process to where we can, for a little bit of time, have some seed money to where we can find another long-term revenue stream to put money aside for some of these buildings that have some, minor improvements that need to occur and cosmetic things.
Well, and again, one of the ideas about the other part of the 25 cents that we're going to receive in increasing the parking fees would go toward, and correct me if I'm wrong, toward infrastructure. So I would assume that some of those funds would go toward that allocation as well.
Let me change subject going just a minute. I brought this up to Linda earlier. I don't know if the rest of you noticed, and I did not know it until last Saturday, was it? Or Sunday, I don't know what it was. The CVS over here has paid parking now. $4 an hour to park, and that place was packed. You know, it was absolutely packed on Sunday at $4 an hour. So,
Well, and I think that,
$5 an hour is bad.
But to that, thinking on that same train, if we look at this lot here, and if we said on weekends, that it is available for.
But I don't think we should put meters up where the employees park, you know, so forget that.
So, yeah, that would be that's the way to offset benefit costs. And prevent, or provide wellness, because then employees will start walking to work. But that's something to think about if we look on the weekends or what have you, even set, you know, certain part of the parking lot to effectively charge for parking on weekends when people are, you know, going to the beach and those things. That may be an opportunity to effectively utilize to fund your perpetual care fund. Just thinking globally, big picture right now, but we'll think of some ideas of how to create that revenue stream so we're not having to dip into any other revenue stream to maintain and keep up these buildings, because as you all know, as it continues to age and the wear and tear and the weather and the salt water, we're gonna see some more things that we're gonna have to address.
And the meters are programmed so you can raise the rates up and down, right?
well, yes. In fact, we were able to change those rates after the commission approval on the, I believe, the 13th. We were able to have that done within a day or two, which I was happy they were able to do that.
Good.
Just so the commission's aware, the municipal complex, 50,000, the firehouse asphalt, and I believe the military court of honor, I put those three in the non-departmental fund as improvements, just so you're aware of where those expenditures would go, or expenditure allocations.
And I will get into the asphalt repairs to the concrete. In most situations where you find firehouses, especially in coastal communities, you always have a concrete lip, and you have a concrete, sometimes entirely concrete driveways, because these apparatus are so heavy. And when they are idling, when they're doing exercise with the vehicle on the asphalt, of course, asphalt's going to chip away. It's going to, deteriorate. It's not conducive to being the main entry point or exit point into the firehouse. Ideally, in most situations, you would have about half of your driveway would be a concrete lip until you got to virtually the intersection or the corner where the fire apparatus would then enter your roadway network. So based on what we're starting to see, some of the settlement that's occurring with the actual facility and some of the wear and tear that we're seeing on the asphalt in front of the firehouse, we are recommending putting some monies aside to effectively construct that concrete apron for our fire apparatus and our fire vehicles, so we don't have continued deterioration of the asphalt in front of the firehouse. So this is a project, ideally in the perfect world, as part of the design elements, we would have incorporated that, but we are going to go back to the architect and engineer and express our concerns with respect to the construction technologies and tactics that were utilized, and see if there's a way to effectively see if they would cover it or at least share in the costs associated with that. So we're going to see what we can do to push back on that somehow.
Let me ask you a question on that. Going out on the south side, that's cement all the way down to the street, correct? But on this side, it stops right where the circle is, correct?
Right.
So are we talking about putting cement from where they come down the pad and hit the circle all the way out to the street? Is that what we're?
It's right. It's not directly to the street. It's a little bit before we get to the street, because once we It's mainly a lot of the areas that you'd see the fire station. If they're utilizing the bay for exercises and we park the apparatus outside, it's gonna be that apron, that lip area that we would effectively do that. And we're gonna get our engineers to provide more information and more detail on that to show you exactly the area we're looking at and how much it's gonna cost for us to do that. Because we may have to do piecemeals. It may be $75,000 this year and we may have to come back with an additional request.
Is that an 8-inch versus a 4-inch thickness?
I'm not 100% sure on the thickness, but I can get that. Definitely get that to you.
So what we should be, if the 75, we're gonna just look how far we can go down with the cement. Okay.
Yeah, I'm up for both of those.
The next item is military court of honor. Previously, we had conversations with representatives from the Rotary Club, and they were considering doing a flag disposal pit, yeah. And for whatever reason, there were some hangups in the communication, and unfortunately, the opportunity for them to do that pit in our park, in essence, fell by the wayside. So when we had conversations with folks out in the community, when we were having the discussion about that area, the conversation began about, hey, looking at this park as an opportunity to showcase this community's commitment to its, first responders, its veterans, etc. So in my past experience, one of the things that we've been successful in doing and getting a lot of community support to do it is a military court of honor. And what that military court of honor would be a 5-point star with the U.S. flag in the center, and you would have each branch of the military on each point of the star. You would do it with brick pavers, and folks that served or family members that have loved ones that served would have the opportunity to effectively purchase brick pavers for the purposes of installing them in the military court of honor. Of course, you would light the structure, and we saw it as an opportunity to be a focal point for the community and be an area whereby we would host our Memorial Day, we would host Memorial Day and Veterans Day ceremonies. But the price number here, I think that with some community outreach, with some discussions with some sponsors, we can effectively make a significant dent in that. But the intent behind that is to really showcase when you're coming off the Tom Stewart Causeway and you see the 9/11 memorial and then you see the court of honor. I think it shows what this community effectively really values, and I think it would be a showpiece for us. I can tell you in my past experience, those have been sacred grounds in a lot of communities and has been a special place for folks that have served and folks to recognize those that have paid the ultimate sacrifices in their community. And considering we have such a large population of military veterans and having Bay Pines up the street, I think adding an amenity like that with the opportunity to have the fire pit and the flag disposal components associated with that, you almost transform that Causeway Park into something similar to like a Patriot Park or whatever you would like to call it. So I think it's a nice amenity to add to the community's stock. It would butt that gazebo, and we would clear out some of the shrubbery that we have there and some of the trees in the park. So staff is recommending if the board would consider having us explore this opportunity. Again, this ultimately has to come back to you. You're gonna have to look at design elements. You're gonna have to approve what aspects of it. And you can rest assured that this is something that we would definitely reach out for community support to see this come to life. So we did want to put some money in the budget to effectively show that this is our desire to move forward with this project, and I think it's an opportunity for the city to begin hosting those, Veterans Day and Memorial Day events and kind of kicking off our events there at that particular park. So that's the Military Court of Honor in a nutshell.
Can you explain how driving by the park, the pavers are going to have any impact?
What you're going to see is the flags. You're going to see the flags that will be illuminated at night. So you'll see the U.S. flag, which will probably be a flagpole that would be about 35 feet, and the other flagpoles would be about 20 to 25 feet. So the visual you would get is the, you know,
The flag.
the flags and the
How many
lighting of the
flags
flag.
will it
You'd have a total of 6 flags.
Okay.
You have a total of 6 flags. You'd have the U.S. Flag Center, and then you'd have all the branches of the military surrounding those flags. And, you know, in most situations, we would install those brick pavers before Veterans Day and before Memorial Day. And we would only install them twice a year. You would actually sell them to the community for, you know, depends on the cost, you know, anywhere from $35 to $45. And we'd get them inscribed with whatever they would like, and then it's placed under whichever section of the flag. And then you can have a map as to where their brick pavers are, et cetera.
Is there any reason why they couldn't be installed monthly or, I mean?
We can certainly do that. It's usually easier to do it during that time, just from the standpoint of having that vendor come out there. Usually it's easier for them to come out there on one block and put those in and then come back, so.
You know, I'm thinking from the user standpoint, if I'm buying a paver, I'm gonna want it out there right away.
That's what you charge for.
Or at least in a reasonable amount of
Yeah.
time, not wait 6 months.
Yeah, we can
But
certainly.
that's minor details, I
Yeah.
guess.
Well, I just asked John what it costs to put one paver down, $80.
Cost
80?
to purchase one brick is $80, because we don't.
But to put them down, how much does it cost to put them in the?
Well, we have somebody, they volunteer to put them in, but
Oh,
actually
okay.
to order the brick is $80 that we pay per brick.
What does it cost to put the bricks at John's Pass? Does anybody know?
We'd have to look at that.
Not what we pay,
It used
that's
to
what
be
it costs the
$100.
city? Or what it costs the consumer?
As far as the installation of the brick pavers, I'd have to defer to staff. I'm not sure what the actual cost I can certainly find out what the cost would be to do that. And that's probably why in our past when we've done it in those ways, because it just makes sense. And I think if I'm not mistaken, when I've done this, it's that the installer charges us a billable rate. So if he's out there for 4 hours, he charges us for 4 hours, or a minimum of 2 hours, and he installs all the bricks, versus if you bring them out for 1 or 2 bricks, you're probably gonna pay, you know, those top dollars. And we have very creative, innovative folks that work for us, so I'm sure we can find some folks in one of our departments that have some experience in that, but we can work it out for sure.
Yeah, you've got to put all the bricks down first.
Yeah.
And then you come and you take out the bricks as people buy
Right.
the bricks.
And you replace them,
In
yeah.
John's Pass.
Yeah.
That's how it has to work.
That's actually what we do now.
Yeah.
Down
Yeah.
at the bell tower, it's $100 per brick, and Little Debbie installs those.
I think it was explained much nicer than what I actually thought it was. I don't know what I thought it was, but I like the concept of it. I think the only thing that I would be, I think it's a great concept. I think the only thing that I would want to consider is, will that open us up, and I think I've said this before, to any other, to any service identified organizations or whatever who want to put a statue in the park, or who want to put anything in the park. We don't want it to look messy, but I
Right.
think this is a good idea.
Right, and I would say that this is something specific to the military and to your branches of the military, and anything that you would want to, and the fire pit, and that would be a city asset. It would not be something that would effectively allow for, you know, other entities. If we have somebody say, okay, they're gonna do a flag disposal ceremony or what have you, they would be invited by the city to do that. It wouldn't be something that any agency can say, hey, let's do this or do that. It would be specific to the amenities that we have, and we would have to initiate that conversation or that
Right.
dialogue with that entity to effectively utilize it, so.
Well, I think I learned a lot just from your talking about it. I think that the proximity to the VA is definitely a plus, and I think that because our community certainly does have, consists of a lot of elderly people who have been in many different parts of the branches of the service, that I guess I like the idea.
And one of the things
I
that
didn't know
I
that.
can tell you that is very powerful for folks is when, and we did this at the ceremony, is that the mayor would get up and read all the new bricks that were installed, and so you would hear people from World War II, and you know, invariably they're in the audience, and it encourages them to come to the event because they know their brick's gonna be read by the mayor or what have you, so they're excited, they bring their family members, and then I see a lot of times where they sketch out, they go over the brick to get there, they sketch it out to be able to see it, and some folks, when they return back from home or we recognize veterans in the community, we would actually give them a framed photo of the Court of Honor, and then we would give them a brick that would be a ceremonial brick. So that would be a way that, you know, the city in the past, and in my past experience, it would recognize those that, you know, were service personnel. So it becomes a focal point for the community and a focal point for those that have served and those families that have served. And I think it would really be a nice complement to, as you see that we recognize our first responders and then our military personnel as you walk into the city. And then that little, you know, area right there definitely needs some cosmetic improvements for sure.
You know, I've seen this before, and normally, under each flag, you have the light shining up on the flag, because you're gonna have an ongoing cost, just even to replacing the flags every, probably 4 to 6 months, depending on the weather. You know, so the city's gonna have to set up a fund to continuously fund this.
And that's what we utilize, the sale of the pavers to effectively to do that. And we even had some entities that your local Elks Lodge or your VFW, they would sponsor, you know, a flag, and they would buy at least the U.S. flag, or they would buy something, and, you know, it becomes a focal point that the community really takes ownership of.
Okay.
And I'm glad you mentioned it, because we've been talking about military, but it's the 911 memorial, which is first responders, so we need to remember everybody.
Absolutely.
I think it's another thing that's going to be major upkeep for the city, and it's going to be this ongoing perpetual thing, the same way that 9/11 turned into. That wasn't supposed to cost the city one dime, but here it goes. And I'm just not ready to do that.
Commissioner Oakley, to your point, the one thing that's a benefit to this facility that's different from the 9/11, it doesn't, you know, you pressure wash the pavers, you cut around the edges, you have the flag poles, they're galvanized steel, so they last for a long time. So you have some minor maintenance expenses, but not to the tune of maintaining a facility and a larger monument. This is something that, you know, it wouldn't require as much upkeep as a facility.
What does a flag cost?
That's a good question.
It's about
Yeah, John.
anywhere from $30 to $50.
Oh, that's pretty much.
Yeah, but you're doing it like 3 times a year
Yeah.
times six flags, so,
Right.
you know, a couple $100 a year.
Yeah, they don't last very long down here in the sun.
I think that we're going in it in the right way. We understand that it's something that our city is doing, unlike the uncomfortable feeling that I had about the 9/11 memorial. I mean, it's wonderful and everything, but yes, it was supposed to be paid for totally, forever, perpetually by by individual personal funds.
Right.
And the city has spent out $100,000 on it maybe over the last 8 or 9 years. I know it went over 75 or 80. So, but I think that this is I think it's the right thing to do. I like to do it.
I think like Jonathan said, you know, you can get the VFW and say, okay, you're going to supply this flag. In the American Legion, you're going to supply this flag. In the Vietnam Veterans Association, you're going to supply this flag. And they will do that, you know, so that I don't really see it as a major cost. It's just the maintenance of it, you know, having people out there, you know, your city employees changing them and doing this kind of stuff as they go bad, and getting the word to different organizations, you know, of what is going on. You know, and if you put up the flag, and you put it, you know, you can even ask the different organizations to pay for the flagpole and put a little plaque on it saying, you know, paid for and maintained by organization XYZ. You know, so you can do things like that to make it happen.
I think it'd be a nice addition
Do
to the
something like
gateway
that,
to
you
the
could
city.
cut out some of your costs too.
Yeah.
So it's the consensus to put, and by the way, I just checked with Dave, we would put that 40,000 in the Parks Department. And I mentioned before that I put it into non-departmental, it would be in the Parks Department. The other 2 items above, the 50,000 and the municipal complex and the firehouse for 75, those 2 would be in a non-departmental account.
And will that 40,000 Will that 40,000 be identified, though, as going to that?
Yeah.
Within the Parks
Yep.
Department? Okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
it would be,
it'd be earmarked as
there'd be a
capital.
description,
Okay.
Yeah.
And I thought that's why we were doing this whole
right,
exercise.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it would go under probably capital improvement, but there would be a description in the budget that it was earmarked for that. And proceeding forward, if the commission is agreeable and acceptable of all of that, since it was mentioned before, if we could kind of strategically go and hit these, and since it was mentioned and with the city manager's approval, the Archibald, two allocations, the 30,000, the 65,000 for the boathouse or bathhouse and the restroom improvement respectfully, if there could be some discussion on that.
If you wouldn't mind, I'd like for both the Public Works Director and the Recreation Director to provide some insight on the bathhouse situation as well as the restroom facilities at Archibald Park and why we're asking for these monies.
The bathrooms currently at Archibald Park, when we renovated the park the last time, what we didn't do was the pipes inside the wall, down into the ground, and then to the Pinellas County sewer system. So we believe that needs to be replaced from that portion out. We need to increase water pressure in there due to the use of the facility. The facility only has, the men's room only has one stall and then 2 urinals. So we were asking for the bathhouse money, which would be built in the planter right to the north of the restroom facility.
Say that again, to where, Dave?
It's just to the north of the restroom facility. There's a planter there now currently, and we would turn that into changing rooms. So instead of folks being in the bathroom, everybody in there trying to change, use the facilities, et cetera, we'll be able to eliminate that. We're not gonna put any type of new plumbing or anything on that side. We're going to also look at the idea of, in that current space we have, if we could possibly add an additional bathroom. As we move forward, the park just gets more popular, better. So these are some things that are infrastructure stuff that we really didn't discover until we were into the Archibald project how bad quite the plumbing was there. We fight it regularly. It's something that it's difficult to keep going. I believe Lori from the Snack Shack is here, so she knows the struggle is real. So we would respectfully ask that these funds be left in for the 2019 budget. The bathhouse was something that we had planned to get done in the 2018 budget. We did not receive any prices that I believe were in line with the budget that we had available. That's why you see these funds in your 2019 year budget. And once again, these are items that I think that are just going to make our park so much more user-friendly to our visitors and residents.
Couple quick questions. How long will this construction take to do? And when do you know, if it's approved for 2019 budget, when do you anticipate starting it? I'm just kind of looking at spring break and we're gonna have everything closed down and lose.
I would never do that. No, sir.
I'm just
No.
trying to get an idea.
And to answer your question, that would be something we would release for an RFP, of course.
Okay.
But it's something we would try to manage the timing of the construction the best that we can. I will tell you that, you know, everybody says there's a season. Our season now is that if the weather is good, we're busy.
Yes.
I mean, that's it. We're busy. So you know, we're gonna try to do it in September, possibly. I'm not sure exactly. I don't want to quote
Okay.
dates or timeframes. We're not building anything that's going to be more than, I would say, 120 days.
You know, I just see things around here, and I know it's not us doing it, but, you know, when do they fix the streets? During spring break? You know, when, you know, it's always like the worst time to do things is when they do it.
It was never a good time to pave a street.
That's true.
No.
It gets worse though sometimes.
The Archibald project, though, we would definitely keep all those things in mind. If there was any downtime with the restrooms at all, we would provide very clean, nice portalettes for the public to use, and we'd make sure that they had a very nice experience while they were at the park. The bathrooms wouldn't be an issue.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I just feel we go ahead with it.
Everything would have to come back for your approval. You would see all these things come back for you with line item detailed cost. Anything that that you see here would come back before you for your approval.
That total 95,000 would be capital improvements allocated to the Archibald Fund, and it would come out of the it would be a regular allocation in the FY 2019 budget.
I'm with it.
I am also, I think we move forward.
I think we have a consensus, right? It's fine.
Okay, thank you. Going back a little bit to hit the local option sales tax fund, and again, with the city manager's approval, if we could tackle that, that is basically, that total is 260,000, and again, what that is in the plan right now coming out of that fund is, and I know the commission had some real serious discussions about this, but 90,000 is earmarked for city center dock construction. There, and I'll repeat this again because I think it came up at a previous budget meeting. There is a state grant that I'm sitting on right now that's a little under $50,000. We have to at least match that. So that's, again, that's why, and actually that 90,000 is almost like a rebudget, if you will. And that's why that 90,000 is in there to go along with that grant. And again, I know this has been an issue that the commission has gone back and forth with.
That's for putting docks right out here, correct?
Yes,
I
yes.
thought the grant was 90.
I thought the grant was 90. I thought that's what we were
That's what
matching.
we've been told.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
grant is
that,
90.
yeah, it is close to 90, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm still back on the splash pad. I'm sorry.
Right, right.
It is 90, I'm sorry. And that's
Okay.
why there's an exact match. Thank you.
Right.
So what's
okay.
200,000 for in 2020?
Again, that would be to further the project
That's-
if the commission desired.
What is
So
that?
it's a
Is that just-
$400,000 project versus a $200,000 project.
That 200,000 in the next year, that doesn't have to be there. It's just if that's the board's direction to have additional monies
That wasn't my
earmarked.
question.
I'm sorry?
So this is a $400,000 dock, not a $200,000 dock. Is that what?
It can be
Is the
anything
two-
that the commission desires. We're just asking for direction.
But all you've got
So
is
is this dock
$90,000
at City
grant.
Center supposed to be $180,000? That is my question. Or is it going to cost
Could I-
more than $180,000?
Okay.
Where are you looking?
We are looking
Right.
at city center dock improvements, coming from the lost fund. You see 110 and 17, 50 and 18. I don't think there's been anything spent there. We have the 90,000 with the grant and the 200,000 worth for the purposes of, once we get the permitting done for this, the $200,000 would be a first phase of construction. If anybody has been up to Indian Rocks Beach on the Intercoastal Waterway, they have I think, 12 slips that they built there. So this would be a phased project, there would be no power associated with these docks. These would just merely be transient docks for folks to come, to tie up, to use our facilities out here at the park, parents, et cetera. Folks that want to go over to use the grocery possibly, maybe to go to the beach. They don't want to take their car that day, they can park the boat. But it's just a budget number so that we could get started.
The question is the dock $180,000 or is it closer to $400,000? That's my question.
Right, I thought.
Well,
isn't
the-
We have a $90,000 grant. We have $90,000 they're budgeting this year. That's
Ma'am.
$180,000. Now we're being told it takes another $200,000 next year to get the project moving.
That's
So
not
that's
what
a-
I said. I would like to
exactly
correct
what you
that
said.
with saying the $90,000 is for an engineering grant, not for construction.
Oh,
So
So
the whole
so
thing
it's-
is gonna be like closer to $400,000.
It's the design and
That's-
engineering, and then the capital cost would
Right.
then be the cost that the city would have to incur, depending on the design.
Depending on where, we're gonna do the design as we intended, and then the 200 would be the first phase.
Now let me ask you this, is with the grant that the city received, is there any requirement, can the city effectively say, we're gonna spend the $90,000 to do design and engineering, but if the construction cost is 200 or 300 or 400, can the city design it to be able to say, we're only gonna be able to put in $200,000 worth of docks?
Yes.
So you have the flexibility to construct what you effectively want to construct. It's just that you have to utilize that money. There's an understanding that you have to proceed
Correct.
forward with, okay.
And
Yeah, and
it's
they
a
said-
$45,000 grant with a $45,000 match.
Right.
So
Gotcha.
the 90,000 total.
I thought it was a $90,000 grant with a $90,000 match, or vice versa.
That's what we've been told.
Isn't that what you just said?
That's what we've been
Said
told.
45.
I know, we were told it was 90 and we were gonna match 90.
All right, so what I'm hearing, let me just clarify this, that if we spend $90,000 for this dock, we're
But-
gonna get it
no, for
$90,000.
the.
Madam Mayor and Commissioners,
engineering
let me just
stuff.
explain this more. The 90,000 grant would be in revenue, okay? This 90,000 would be on the expenditure or the other side of it,
I know.
okay?
So we've got $90,000 in the budget, and if we spend that, somebody's gonna give us $90,000, right?
We would be.
Is it,
No, you
that's,
just said 45.
We would be required to spend that, yes, and then submit for reimbursement to the state that we did it, we accomplished it, and the receipts and everything else that goes with that,
So
with the
the-
expenditures.
so we would get that $90,000.
Yes.
But I think Nancy has a very good point.
But that's not the cost of the dock.
Yeah, no, that's just the
Right.
cost of the.
That's the
engineering.
cost of the
Now we get to
engineering.
spend another 200 grand to build the dock.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yes.
Well, where is
So
that?
it's $400,000 for it.
So effectively, it depends on if the board wants to proceed forward with the docks, then you're gonna get the money associated with, or a portion of the money for the design and engineering, and then you would have to effectively make a decision how much you want to spend on that those docks, how many docks that is, and those types of things. So the grant is effectively for the purposes of assisting in the design money associated
And
with
we'd
that.
have to spend at least $90,000.
You, at minimum, if you're gonna do any docks, you're gonna be spending at least, you know.
So it's, actually, we're gonna spend $290,000 if we build the dock.
If that's what's
Right.
gonna cost us.
Right.
So
Yeah.
$300,000 dock.
Right. Well, I've been a boater for 40 years, I guess, but
too.
I can't see, I can't see going into that project at all, really.
can't
I
either.
think that it's, I think it's great for people to come in and have a dock over here to go to if they want to go to Winn-Dixie or if they want to go to ROC Park, to Rock Park and do other things. But no, I think that we have way more higher or more important issues like with, I'd rather throw all that money into our streets myself.
Absolutely, I'm with you. And stormwater.
So.
And stormwater, yes.
So if it's a consensus of the commission, we've got 170,000 in the lost for beach access and parking lot improvement plan. We can add that 90,000 in with that 170 if it's the direction of the commission.
That's what I think you should do.
I'm showing 300.
I'm
Yeah,
showing
me too.
300,000, where you come up with the
Oh, I'm
170?
sure, yeah.
Again, the 300 was changed to 170.
That's 2020.
Yeah, 300 is in 2020.
300 is in 2020.
So
300 is also in 19.
that 300 was changed from 300 to 170.
What did we take out of it?
That was the project that you changed to incorporate the additional monies for 137th Avenue, or?
Right, actually, I reduced it basically so that we could afford the 90,000 too. So, again, what I'm saying is that 90,000 can roll into the beach access parking and parking lot improvement plan if it's the direction of the commission.
So we're looking at 300,000 in both 19 and 20 for the beach access and parking lot improvement. So
Well,
$600,000 overall.
You would be looking at the 90 plus the 170 plus the next year would be 300. And again, it's just a placeholder. You can make that change. You can change that.
And effectively, that
Okay,
money
no,
would,
You can move the 90 into the, I guess you have 170 now to the beach access.
I'm sorry, and it went from 300 to 170 because I had to balance the fund and I didn't have enough to cover both of those.
Okay, I'm good with that.
So add both of those together, or the 90 and the 170 in the beach. So the city dock construction goes away.
Right.
Right.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
so we will inform the granting entity. And then whatever process we need to do to effectively,
I haven't seen that grant, so I'll let you respond.
Okay, you could stay
So
here.
that's going to be 260 in that fund for 19?
Yes,
Okay.
yep, thank you. Going forward, while Dave is still here, in the sanitation fund, because that's been kind of controversial with the recycling, and I know the commission, and again, with the city manager's approval, I'm addressing this. I know that that fund is going to be debated in the next couple of meetings because of the recycling situation. Dave has volunteered, until we can get closure on this fund, Dave had $310,000 on the vehicles for a Packer truck, and we've decided to push that into 2020. So that 310 for the Packer truck would go from 219 to 220 until we can get a better feeling and a better comfort level with the recycling issue, which is very
And I would like to add that we are able to push that purchase because of the outstanding maintenance that is done to our vehicles on a daily basis.
So we're moving to 310 to where?
just to the next year, the 2020. So we'll come out of 2019 totally.
Okay.
So you're not going to use that money at all? I mean,
It's coming out of the budget.
Well, that money would be pushed to a following year.
And actually, Dave would probably start taking bids of that toward the tail end of 2019.
Yes, sir.
okay.
And then going forward, while Dave is still up here on stormwater, we did some math on upcoming stormwater projects and how we can fit going forward in budgeting the stormwater fund to allocate for, now that Rex Place is done, we're going into 137th Ave, and because of the cost increases there, and because of the Parsley project, that's 170,000, that Al Carrier is actually starting with Dave in the next couple of months. Because of the burden of those projects, we've got, and this is actually the first line on the capital improvements. Actually, it's at 137th Ave. We're putting 285,000 in there to take care of the additional needs that we will have in 2019 to complete those projects. that because of construction costs have increased.
The one I have has 103,000, so now you're wanting to make it 285?
I'm sorry, that 103 was changed to 285.
I knew that wasn't right.
And then the remaining stormwater fund just has some vehicles, or actually, I'm sorry.
No vehicles.
No vehicles at all?
No, sir, there's no vehicles slotted to be replaced out of the stormwater fund next year. You see 391, 906, I think that's about 370 left from 18. As Walt referenced, I'm getting ready to release an RFP for about 5 repairs, one of them being the Parsley project next to, down towards the Elks Lodge. That's really gonna get us close to where we need to be. So there's that money, and then the 200,000 you see
Yes.
in the budget is for ongoing point repair type stuff.
Correct.
That comes up on a fairly regular basis, but as you can see, that fund went up to $391,000 in 18 because of 17. There were some point repairs and stuff that didn't get done. We were busy with other projects. So that fund was increased. Now, we are probably going to exhaust that when we release that RFP. So you'll see that $200,000 in that. And the board did raise your stormwater fee 3 years ago. You doubled it.
So that that difference is the 200,000 that Dave receives every year for road replacement and repairs that are needed. The only other thing that I would like to say, if there's no other comments on or changes, is we did hear, and while Dave is up here, we did hear from Al Carrier that in the next couple of years, we have some major projects that that Al has come up to a little over $34 million, and he has prioritized these projects. And that's why on the project improvement or capital improvement, the CIP scheduling out to 2020, we try to put 2 million in there, and then on 2021, another 2.5. So on the 2020 and the 2021, we can start to hit those priority projects, and this is only just touching it. And then going forward in 2022, we've got another 2 million. But again, that's 4.5, that's...
6.5.
Yeah, 6.5. It's just barely touching what needs to happen going forward. But really what needs to happen is during 2019, and we want to make this clear to the commission, during 2019, when the current projects come to completion, we're going to have to face how we're going to strategize to pay that 6.5 million. Where's that going to come from? Is it going to come from a combination of fund balance, increase in fees, ad valorem? Those are the tough decisions and planning that's going to have to take place in 2019, and it has to be done ahead of time so that we have advanced time to properly plan for those projects.
Okay.
Okay.
So is any other questions?
Yeah, well, Dave's still here. The community signage improvement, that would come under him too, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Where are we at? Community.
On this, Dave, we're on this sheet, kind of going down.
Right here, Dave.
Oh.
Right here.
50,000
Road
for
sign
community
improvements.
signage.
That 50,000's been there for 20
We-
years.
We're working
And
toward.
they haven't put a sign up yet.
Is this for the signs that one person keeps asking me about, the
The ones
entrance
on
to the city?
150 and the one
Yeah.
over here. That one used to be called Martha's over here. Martha
Welcome
Booth.
signs to the city,
Remember
but,
that, Martha's sign over there?
Yeah. If,
oh, yeah.
if I'm not,
Charlotte
if I'm
Purple
not
named it.
mistaken, the signage is for some new signage, this new signage program that we're looking to bring to the board as far as, some of our beach access signage, some of the signage citywide. Director Marsicano has been working with Kurt and Steve Tart to bring some designs forward. The ones that we've seen thus far have not been ones that were, from the staff standpoint, too excited to share with you at this particular moment. But Kurt has just started looking at that, but Director Marsicano has Steve Tart working on that. We've had about 10 to 15 signs, and all of them have not really captured what we think is a real good product to be able to show to the board. But we're hopeful to be able to get something to you, I would say, hopefully in the next month, depending on how Kurt and Steve can get something together as far as design elements. But it's looking at our signage throughout the entire city. Some of our,
The
think those-
signs that you looked at that weren't too exciting to bring with us, would you consider our current signs in that category as well?
well, we're
I would.
Because I can't stand those signs.
Those
I never
oval
liked
things.
the signage options that we're gonna be bringing before the board would effectively be the new signage standard citywide.
Right.
So similar to how you see with Treasure Island, they have, this is ADA accessible, though it would communicate a little bit more and have some different, unique aesthetic aspects to it. So we're in probably towards the end of bringing the board something to look at the new sign design elements moving forward.
And the maintenance on the signs in Treasure Island is just lovely. I mean, you've got that nice, big, long, black steel pole, and then you've got all the information right there, and it's consistent. It's themed throughout the
exactly.
entire city, from Blinds Pass all the way, and ours was put up rather, I mean, really, if you look at it, even visitors have commented to me, gosh, it's rather shabby looking, okay? So I'm delighted that we're putting.
Yeah, we're definitely
think
gonna go
that's
for
great.
uniformity throughout the city, signage.
Right.
So this doesn't include the signs at the entryway on 150th and then the one over here when you come into the beach? 'Cause
Yep.
it does include
does.
that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you ought to like that, Commissioner Hodges. You've been talking about that for a long time. I remember when I was sitting out there and you would comment about it, and I'd always
That's
say,
like I
yes,
said,
it needs
Martha Booth was
doing.
talking about it
Yes.
10 or 15
Good.
years ago,
Yeah.
and we had the same 50 grand in there to do
Right.
it for all these years.
Well, it will come to
Well,
fruition.
By the way, while Dave is still here, the Phase 2 for the Gulf Boulevard undergrounding utilities, a little over $1 million. That's just about to get started. We talked to Steve Tart the other day, and then we asked Steve to give us another estimate and that would take us up to 144th. Steve is going to give us another estimate of what it would take to finish the whole thing, and that might be another $400,000.
And the reason that we wanted to, communicate that to the board is we're gonna go as far as we can go with the money based on the appropriation that the board gave us, the authorization. We communicated to Mr. Tart that even though conceptually the document that was executed said we'd go from this point to this point, the funding doesn't match. The cost for construction has gone up a little bit. And so we're going to accomplish as much as we can accomplish. But I believe in the original agreement, it contemplated that we would go up to 144th, but the costs were quite high from the difference. So we even talked with him that this particular project would transcend fiscal years. So conceivably, you'll move all the way through fiscal year 19, and then by the time towards the start of fiscal year 20, then you can do another budget appropriation to finish out that particular project, as opposed to looking for the cash right now to, put in there. In essence, it would sit in an account until
they got to the point where they completed the end. So we're looking at some options, but invariably we'll end up bringing that back to the board. Is there
Where's the generator on this?
the?
just asked that question.
The
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't
we
ask.
had conversations with the representatives from the generator company, and I believe the cost, I think it's $286 for the generator and $45,000 to relocate the generator and some additional monies, but it takes almost 6 months to order the generator. So we thought, okay, if we effectively move forward with the generator now, by the time we get it, we'll have it at the end of hurricane season. But that is a project that we want to bring forward for the board to consider, but the funding source that we want to utilize is not necessarily the funding source that we tap into very often. We want to utilize that emergency disaster preparedness money because that is money that is earmarked, set aside, in addition to, the finance director, correct me if I'm wrong, that approximately about $400,000 was utilized from the city's fund balance to effectively pay for costs associated for the city's response in Hurricane Irma. And those monies traditionally would have come from that account, but they didn't. So in order to effectuate the transfer of the funds or offset the costs, the staff's recommendation would be to utilize that funding source to bring a generator, to acquire the generator. So that's something that we don't have to effectively wait for. It's just getting all the documentation, paperwork together, and then putting in the order, which then takes, 6 months for them to actually construct the generator, and then a couple of days for them to install it. But it's a 6-month process. And then we would look to get about $200,000 back in grant funding, if I'm not mistaken. So it is something that we're going to be bringing back to an agenda for the board. But we didn't want to put it as a capital project because it's something that effectively we know the board wants to move forward on it. So you may end up seeing it before the end of this fiscal year or even the start of fiscal year 19.
In the meantime, we received the city manager's approval to go ahead and move the servers to the firehouse as a protective measure and security measure as we're waiting for all these pieces to fit.
And what we would do in the event of an activation, we would be over at the firehouse. We would not be here. So we would be able to have power throughout the duration of the event. And then, of course, in subsequent activations, we'd have generators both here, the recreation facility, and so the entire City Hall campus would effectively be on backup power in the event of an activation. So we would be able to support those that may need, temporary shelter, temporary assistance, even looking at the opportunity for pets and those kind of things, and maybe even seeing if supporting what county, because the county ultimately decides where the shelters would be, and plus we're a barrier island, but maybe even after a staging area for the Red Cross or other entities in the event that there's an activation.
And actually, the generators, the servers, even with the generator here, may continue to stay at the fire department.
Okay, so what else?
Director Pierce, anything else on capital that we wanted to hit on, or Director Marsicano, anything on?
No, sir, I don't believe so.
I think we've received the direction so far that we need to go forward.
What's going on with the vehicle replacement? Because like on this, it still says 142. I thought that dropped down because of the...
It will. As soon as we execute the contract with Enterprise, it will effectively change.
Okay.
And I've got a couple more questions. Well, I'm looking at this one, budget revenue, and I don't understand why the chair rental agreement with the people on the beach is dropping $3,000 from 18 to 19. Why it's dropping from 15,000 down to 12,000?
I think that 15,000, I think there might have been a carryover payment. I'll check that out. I did double check that 12,000, that was the figure, but I'm now noticing that the actual for 2017 is 14,000. So I don't know if we received an additional payment, but I'll check that out again.
Okay. And then and this is until 2021. It's for, and the capital improvements, another $500,000 for another fire engine?
That's out of the lost fund. I believe that's vehicle, is 2004, that would have to be replaced. I guess that's E25.
Correct.
Again, I can check with Daryl on that figure, or not that figure, but the replacement of that vehicle.
Okay. And I would just like to bring one other thing up that has to do with the taxes and the expenditures. And I brought it to both, well, I brought it to Jonathan before. You know, a lot of cities, the fire department is budgeted separately. You know, like they have their, on the taxing line, you know, it's like, here's the taxes for the fire department, you know, what their budget is, based strictly on their budget. Their budget is a separate entity, basically, and it wouldn't be part of our budget as the city.
You're saying it's got a tax authority.
Right, and, you know, they said it would take 2-3 years to do that. I think that we truly need to look into that, because then if we are servicing Reddington or North Reddington Beach, we can put that into their tax also. It just doesn't have to be in our taxes that it's funded out of. So, you know, I think it's something in the future that we kind of need to look forward and move forward with. You know, because I was just even reading in today's paper, you know, how Pinellas County is taxing different little cities, for like the fire department, stuff like that, separately. You know, and I think we need to kind of look at that and see if we have, you know, what our options are and what we can do, and, you know, so that people see what the fire department is costing, and then, you know, if we have to raise the millage rate, it would also be raised for Reddington and North Reddington Beach and stuff like that. So that money all comes into us, so.
When are we gonna see that contract?
I reached out to the Seminole city manager to go over there and have a conversation with them. I'm hoping to hear back from them, if not this week, next week. But the contract, we have to get it before you hear, I would say at maybe the next regular meeting, if not sooner.
Right, because they've had the same rate for 20 years. And I don't have any bill that I've ever had that had the same rate for 20 years. Gas, nothing. There's nothing that has been for that. So there's definitely got to be an increase.
So, yeah, we'll definitely bring that back.
Are we done with the CIP?
If the board has any additional questions, we're ready to prepare to answer. If not, we can move on.
I would recommend that we take a 10-minute recess.
Okay.
10 minutes, 5 minutes, what is it? How long?
I don't know, if I say 5, it'll be 10 anyway. So I'm just going with 10.
I'll check on that.
That's why I was just checking, man, Madam Mayor. I wanted to make sure it wasn't a 7.5. I wanted to make sure.
For you, Presume there's seats? All of them. Sit down. You two out there.
Most of them ran out after
Yeah.
that gavel.
Madam Mayor, if I may, the items that are left to discuss are the city manager's budget as well as non-departmental. There's been some changes to the city manager's budget. We have incorporated basically two new positions, one existing position in the organization and then a new position, one being the public information specialist. So a lot of the increases associated with some of the line items are incorporating some of the necessary tools that individual needs to be successful. Also, when we did look at the expenditures in the city manager's budget, we looked at what the trends were historically and tried to do a trend analysis so we make sure that the right amount of monies for whatever line item are in there. Also, we're absorbing a lot of the ancillary costs for the human resources coordinator. Human resources will be a component of the city manager's office, so some of the costs that you have seen shifted from the finance department to the city manager's department, so that's why you see the increase. Director Pierce can get into a little bit more specifics as to some of the increases associated with the new HR coordinator, where our existing HR coordinator coming over to the city manager's budget.
Yeah, there's a total of 22,600 that follows the HR coordinator. Basically, real quick, what that involves with is the account 3135, the pre-employment services, 3,500 will follow with that from the finance department to the city manager's department. The other contractual services, 3,400, which basically is the paycheck services related to our payroll. That's 15,800. And then travel and training, which is the 400 account, that's 1,500. That would follow the HR coordinator. And the 4,700 print and reproduction of services, that'd be $500. Then the 5,100 office supplies, there'd be basically 1,000 in there. And then dues and fees would be another 300. So it approaches 22,600. There might be some additional travel that I've talked to the HR coordinator about that she might need, and that might exceed that travel amount, but it would probably be absorbed by the additional budget amount that's presently in the city manager's account.
And the city manager stands prepared to answer any questions that you may have on the city manager's budget.
So where are we standing on the donation to the chambers? I know we discussed it at one point.
We already got direction on that. The direction we got from the commission was to split that 2,000 each for a total of 4. So that figure has changed. So that is direction we have already received.
I don't know, because at one point we were talking about getting rid of it altogether and just keeping the dollars in the membership.
Where's the line item?
Nobody
Oh, under
agreed
dues
with
and
me.
subscriptions, okay. Oh, down there.
Again,
I know, I
That-
brought
is
that
that-
up, yes.
Yeah, I mean,
I
I
said
don't
that we
recall
should be,
having figuring out exactly what we were going to do with it. I don't recall that.
right, but I believe the consensus was,
yeah,
I
the
was the only
consensus
one that
was to
said,
make it
you know,
2,000 each.
Yeah,
Okay, if you want to leave it that, that's fine.
yeah.
Mr. City Manager, the city attorney, wasn't he going to be put on a separate budget?
Yes, we are actually, I spoke with the finance director on that. What we're going to do is take out the expenditures related to the city attorney, and effectively he would have his own budget page and his own expenditures associated with his employment with the city. Now, there's going to be things in there effectively that are going to be zeroed out because the city attorney doesn't have some of the other ancillary benefits or some of the other line items, but he will have his own segment of the budget, yes.
If it's the commission's, what I would like to do with the commission's, I would just like to request this. I indicated at the start of this meeting, the difference presently with revenues over expenditures is 96,000. I really would like to take 20,000 of that and put that in, that other 20,000 in other legal expenses, mainly because maybe the use of a continuous use of a land attorney next year. We've already pretty much contracted with that person, and it will spill into next year. So just to have a comfort level and to budget better, I would like to put 20,000 into, of that 96 difference, into the other legal expenditures, if that's okay with the commission.
I'm sorry, I missed where you're taking it from.
Well,
From the savings, in order, right now, our budget, our expenditures are under our revenues. So what will happen is any additional cost or any other things that the board wants to effectively do, or specific here to the land use attorney or the city attorney, you would then you siphon off that money to effectively have it balance out, and anything that's remaining would go into fund balance. So what the finance director is requesting is if the board cares to put an additional amount of monies into legal costs or professional services for legal fees to help incur any cost associated with the land use attorney and any other attorneys that we may engage as part of any initiatives or projects that the board wishes to entertain.
I just feel the legal account is just under budget and just needs a little bit of more of an allocation in there. And again, to make it clear, our total revenues, the way they stand right now in general fund, is 10 million per the document that I submitted, that this summary right here. The revenues that we're looking at so far is $10,055,085. The total expenditures that we're looking at is $9,958,685. Now, granted, that those two numbers will change based on some of the capital corrections that were made today, but we're looking at a plus difference of 96,000. So I'd like to take out that 96,000, 20,000 of that to put into other legal expenditures to help the legal account.
Why wouldn't that go into community development? Isn't that where Linda is?
Yes.
Why wouldn't it go into there if you're using it for the land use attorney?
Because that's where the budget,
Well,
that's where we come out
again,
of.
if you have a separate area for attorneys and Ralph isn't the only one that's paid out of here. Also, Tom Gonzalez, our labor attorney, is also paid out of here. So to be.
Yeah, but he's HR, basically.
Okay,
so-
one more time. We're taking the legal services out of the city manager's account,
Right.
and we're putting it into a separate department. And if we're going to do that, all legal services should be reflected in that department.
And as your city attorney
Okay.
being
I got you.
the principal
okay?
attorney, they
I
effectively
understand.
manage those
you're gonna
relationships
list
with
them
the
all
other
separately.
attorneys.
Yes,
Within that, you're gonna have land use, employment
Yep.
attorney.
yes, I will.
Any other specialized attorneys that are. okay.
Yes, I will. And also, if it's a consensus of the commission, what I'd also like to do is take another $10,000 from that 96, and I'd like to put it into finance to increase the audit fees, because again, I think we're looking at a single audit next year that might be a little bit more complicated that our auditor needs to do.
Single audit on grants?
Yes.
No, those are simple.
Well, again, this is something that he needs to do that takes additional funds to do it.
Okay.
Never seem to be short on lawsuits, so I would have to think that, that's certainly warranted.
Now, didn't we have the land use attorney, didn't we already hire a land use attorney?
We have, but we anticipate we're going to be utilizing her more so throughout the fiscal year. Because in the perfect world, I think staff would feel comfortable, and we would still need to speak specifically with Attorney Brooks, is that any land use planning and zoning elements of public policy, that we have the land use attorney work with the planning and zoning director to effectively make sure that the items that come to you have that specific skill set and then that set of eyes. Attorney Brooks has, copious amounts of experience, but in the field of land use, And when we're talking about development and development agreements, I think it is in the city's best interest to have somebody that specializes in that field. So you have that peace of mind that somebody is looking at it in addition to your city attorney that specializes in that discipline. So I think there's a value to having them on board for the
No, I'm
long
not
term.
questioning that. I'm questioning the 20,000, because we're already paying this land use attorney.
With
Right?
the-
So
we-
20,000 is extra?
We have money in, well, this year's budget, we're just taking it off of existing monies that we have. Next year's budget, we're putting it into for next year's budget. We don't have any money budgeted this year for the land use attorney, and so next year we're budgeting for it. So that's why you see the $20,000 or $10,000 that the director's requesting.
Yeah, and since we've just hired this land use attorney, by the time this attorney starts to work and I mean, we're almost in August. By the time we get a bill from this attorney of any significance, you know, we could be, you know, well into September or even October.
I got a question on line number 4,800, the promotional account. Why did that jump from 15 to 25,000?
That was based on the conversation that we had with the board with respect to publication and more looking to create some type of newsletter piece and other informational pieces. So we wanted to give Kurt the additional monies to effectively, or the public information specialist the additional monies to effectively accomplish what the board had communicated to staff early on.
Okay.
By the way, while we're talking about Kurt's salary, I took a third of Kurt's salary and spread it and increased the administrative services cost or allocation for the building fund or the other funds, with the idea being is not just the general fund, but other funds would help support his services.
And what about office supplies? Why did that jump 150%?
Office supplies was probably because of the addition of Kurt and Karen.
Yes.
Yeah,
A lot of paper, huh?
yeah. I like to write, but not that much. There's no additional questions. We can move to non-departmental.
Okay.
Wait a minute, let me make sure I finish this page. I guess. Okay.
More paper,
Let's
more
go to
paper,
non-departmental.
more trees.
We're handing out
38.
the non-departmental, the way, the year-to-date as it stands right now.
Oh, okay, so go back.
And just so, you know, I already went over the non-departmental budget when I did my budget, but I think it was Commissioner Delford who brought up the concern of the non-departmental account and what the purpose was. And so what I'm doing by giving this information to you is basically some of the things, and certainly I'm kind of glad that the topic was brought up, because chances are I'm going to be coming to the commission for a budget amendment in after the end of the fiscal year, probably in October, or definitely in October, to take care of this account. And some of the challenges that have hit this account, and I'll just name a few here. The first line item is the computer hardware. The reason why that's in the red by 30,000 is mainly due to the cyber contract that we signed with Network People to that would spill over or be part, that would also spill over and be part of next year's budget. But one of the reasons why that's in the red is that 20,000 plus was not budgeted when we approved that contract back in December. Some of the other things, the IT service, 3123 is actually the website, and that's in the red, but that will probably be cured by the rec center is giving or donating $15,000 toward this that would help bail that out.
And they're utilizing unexpended monies, so monies that they anticipate that they're not going to expend at the end of the fiscal year would be the monies that we use to offset the cost for the website, and then we have some other funding sources that we can do to effectively get the website where it needs to be.
So when are we gonna put the ferry thing to, are we gonna do it or not do it? Because it's in here.
You were actually having that discussion on the 31st, as far as the ferry to get direction.
Why does this keep getting dragged out? I have a meeting this week on it. Now it's
We're
2:30. It's a budget item. I don't know why we can't just say, do we want to do it or don't we want to do it?
Because we want to discuss a proposed modification to the agreement that has been discussed with the operator, and then share that perspective with all members of the board, and then allow for that individual to come and present that concept or that idea to the board for
15 minutes,
consideration.
not 1 minute past 15 minutes.
It's in your
I'm not
policy,
done.
it's in your policy, and we're gonna adhere to the policy.
It's just been beat to death over and over.
Well,
So,
these are all
you're gonna wait till the
expenses from last year,
31st to see if we're gonna put it in here or not.
I'm sorry?
You're gonna wait till July 31st to see if we're gonna leave ferry money in there or not.
Well, the 25,000 will be part of the proposed budget, and between the proposed and tentative, the commission is allowed to make changes. So while it's part of the proposed budget at this point in time, you know, you can give us still the direction to do whatever you want to do with
I
that.
say we take it out now, and if we decide to put it back in, then we put it back in. But as it stands right now, there's probably nothing that they could say to me that I would want to subsidize a private business.
I agree with Nancy. And I rode the ferry this weekend, and it confirmed everything I thought about it. It's more of a boat ride than anything. So,
Well, these are just
I mean, it was
expenses
a
from
nice
this year,
boat
right?
ride.
This is just this year, yeah.
Okay, this isn't the budget, okay. This is just,
And another item toward the end of this report is, on the bottom is a negative 31,000. That was actually the bond expenditures to refinance the bond that we just refinanced, yeah. The one thing with this account, and we mentioned it to the directors, sometimes when they want to purchase a monitor, another computer, if it goes through network people, I don't know if they figured out that it would get charged here. No, it would be charged to their account or their department. So I think sometimes in the past, we might have expended some items like that in this account because it was network people related, but we've made it clear to directors, that we really don't want to do that anymore, that if they have money in their budget, they will be charged for that. That's all I wanted to say about.
Okay, back to the ferry. I'm proposing that we take it out until all this other stuff comes up, and if we decide to put it back in, we decide. But it's a subsidy, and it doesn't need to be in our budget right now, or on July 31st. You agree?
I agree.
I have to agree as well with Commissioner Oakley and the mayor, that we have talked about it so many times. I can certainly understand that they might want to deviate in certain areas, and they might want to bring the commission a revised contract, whatever. But it's not even the money that bothers me, really. It's the principle of it. It's a subsidy.
Absolutely.
So irregardless of what conditions they might feel they would like to propose to the commission again, I think it's a private business. I wish them all the luck in the world, and I think it's wonderful, but, it's a private business, so I don't know.
What do you think?
I mean, I think it's I really do think that it's, perhaps maybe not wasting their time, but they're spending time that maybe they could
Wasting our
get it
time.
somewhere else. Well, I mean, I'm not being rude or anything, it's kind of spending our time as well. But I know we won't have much time, if we limit them to 15 minutes and, make the decision then. But I don't see where I'm going to change my mind, based on whatever is presented, because.
The one thing the city manager and I, we did talk about is possibly splitting this and maybe lessen the pain over another year and allow some type of phase-out approach to this.
It's a subsidy.
No,
Well,
I understand where you're coming from, Director. I do understand where you're coming from, but that's not my problem with it. My problem with it is it's a principle thing, okay? It's not that it should be split or $5,000 or $15,000 or whatever. It's a private business, and I wish them all the luck, but I don't want to pay for it, so I'm not going to commit myself.
If it was actually a transportation and it took cars off the road, it'd be something I'd consider, but I can't see, actually, it put cars on the road because people have to drive.
To get there.
To get there. For me, it was easy. I walked across the street. It was a great boat ride. I got off at John's Pass. The people on the boat were really nice. But it's a private business and it's not a taxi.
Well, Madam Mayor, if I may, and the reason that staff moved in this direction was consistent with the perspective that was shared with the board and the request by staff to say we would like for Ms. Hubbard to be able to share her perspective and her elements to what a new agreement looks like. And one of the things that was communicated to staff is that effectively they would be willing to change and modify the route. They've even talked about allowing for residents to ride for free, to make significant modifications to the agreement that staff wanted you to be able to hear the proposal and hear the perspective versus making the decision now when they're not present. There's no commitment with regards to having the $25,000 as a placeholder. This is a budget process that effectively, after that meeting on the 31st, the board can give us the same direction and we can eliminate that $25,000 in its entirety or eliminate half of it or a quarter of it or what have you. We just wanted to allow for the opportunity for the entity to share their concepts and hear directly from you again to say, hey, we're putting everything on the table. What's the pleasure of the board? And then make a decision based on the information. I didn't want to go in there and just grab the $25,000 out of the budget with not having the discussion and dialogue with that member that would be present here in less than a week. So that's why we scheduled it for the meeting, provided adequate notice to provide you information, and we're meeting with each of you individually to brief you on concepts that we've talked about. But if it is the pleasure of the board to effectively remove that, we can do that. It certainly is your decision to make.
We can also put it back in if we change our mind, but I seriously doubt there's going to be anything they can bring to the table to change their mind. I wouldn't write it. And I wouldn't think any of my neighbors would ride it. If they want to go the pass in a boat, they're going to jump in their own boat. But most people can get there in a car in
5 minutes.
In 5 minutes and park for free that live here in Madeira Beach. It's not something that the residents are going to use. So, therefore, I just take it out. We can't put it back in if they miraculously come up with something that's going to change our mind, but I doubt it.
I'd be interested to hear what the new route would be, but I can't imagine there'd be anything that would change that would still make it a viable taxi.
Right.
And again, they can still bring that to us and we can change our minds, but.
Well, it has been scheduled already for the 31st, I guess out of respect or due diligence to our city manager. I think, my mind is probably not going to change. I'm not trying to put any kind of a, aura out there, but I would listen to them again,
I'd say, let them have their say on the 31st, and we'll go from there.
I'm not. I'm saying
Listen
pull
to
it out.
everybody.
It's a subsidy. It doesn't matter.
But I understand.
It is a subsidy. I have listened to that so many times, I'm like so over listening to it again.
Okay.
I'm gonna give them the opportunity, but I say pull it out now and not even worry about it.
Well, I'm just going with Debbie, what she just said about letting them have their say.
Out of respect for all parties, I just, I have to feel that way. My position might certainly is not going to change probably, but I'll listen. 15 minutes, I'm just not listening for an hour and a half.
Exactly.
It will be 15 minutes. We'll put
Thank
it
you.
on the timer.
Thank you very much.
Does that include audience
That's 5
participation?
minutes.
Yeah, the whole presentation.
I have a question to change the subject. Are we through with this subject?
I think we
If there's no other,
I've got some questions, but go ahead, you can go first.
Okay, I have a question that I have been trying to ask for so long, and I keep putting it on the back burner, and I don't know if we've already gone over it, whatever. And I don't know if it's in city manager or non-departmental, so you can just tell me. And it's with regards to the holiday schedule, specifically the Pat Shantz Day.
we will be bringing an item to a workshop to
Oh,
discuss that.
okay,
Yep.
fine.
Yeah, we're
Okay,
just
thank you.
collecting.
I didn't know if it was part of this procedure, and I
Well, it
just
should,
wanted to
why
ask.
wouldn't it be? It's part of the budget.
Well, but I
We
couldn't
don't bring
find it
you all the
anywhere in here.
vacation days and all those
Right.
different things, so we're gonna be bringing that particular, that day because we did get some communication from the Civil Service Board or its board member about that day, and so we've been discussing, internally, some components associated with that day, getting the fiscal impact and all those different things. So we're bringing that to the board to talk about that specific
Item, okay.
day and that item.
That's fine, I just didn't want to not do it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
My question is, in the past, they had the city manager had a promotional account, and it got used and abused, I think, in my opinion. Is there still a promotional account in this budget?
4,800. It'd be in the city
That's-
manager's 4,800.
Yes, 4,800. I think that was the one that you
Right.
said with Kurt that we had, it was from 15,000 to 25.
25, okay.
Yeah.
So that is your promotional account also?
Right, it's the same number. Yeah.
Okay. The other thing, in the same regard, is the previous, and I brought it up last time, the previous commission, before even I was on, allowed the city manager to spend up to $15,000 without approval of the commission. And I don't think that we need to be at that dollar level, shall I say. And I would.
At one time, it was like 15,000 for an emergency
But
type
then it-
expenditure.
but then it became-
But then before, it was like at a $10,000 level, but he could go up for an emergency. But I know where you come from because it was abused.
Right, so, do we want to put a cap on it that, and be whatever number at this point, that if Mr. Evans feels that he needs to go out and spend money on something, if it's over a certain dollar amount, does he need to get our permission versus, and when I looked at the promotional accounts from before, it was like, money to the fishing tournament and stuff like that. So I guess what I'm asking is, do we want to put a dollar amount that Mr. Evans can't go over without coming to us versus the 15,000 that the previous city manager had?
Well, if it is the board's pleasure, we can certainly bring in a workshop item and look what other managers' purchasing thresholds are. I can tell you that no city manager wants to be held accountable for previous behaviors of others.
Understood.
But also, the other side is if we reduce the city managers, we can reduce it to $5,000 today, but it just means more items that you have to see to approve and more agenda items and more staff work associated with it. So what I would recommend is let us collect the data, look at what other cities comparable to our size has as far as purchasing threshold. But I would certainly recommend and encourage you to put that language in the charter and then that be it. The conversation is no longer had. This is what the manager's purchasing threshold. No board can change it. It's a contract with effectively the voters. And it's not uncommon to see whereby, city manager has a purchasing threshold of X dollars, and that's it. And it invariably never changes. You could also look at putting things that say, hey, based on our population, we're going to freeze it at this. If we get from 4,600 to 5,600 residents, it goes to X. So you can put a lot of different things, but I'd like for you to make a decision based on facts and what other agencies are doing, because effectively there's those things where there's unintended consequences that we make a small tweak, and then if I have to buy a widget over at the marina or something like that, that's, 11,500. I've got to schedule a special meeting or emergency repair sometimes, so you have to, it all depends.
I kind of understand, I kind of look at the promotional account that happened before, and it's like, what I'm thinking is you put a dollar amount on it, but then if it's a safety or health things, then that cap comes off automatically. If you have to purchase something for safety,
Emergency.
emergency, safety reasons or health reasons, then that's different. So, but yeah, we'll wait until you get the information and then look at it.
And I think with the transparencies that are going to be into our, all of our information available for anyone to look at it all, that will certainly, that would help in that area, wouldn't it?
Second off, could you get back with us on the ice house situation? I'm looking at all the paperwork here, and, demolition that the city paid for of a private building, that we're looking at over $23,000 that was spent, could.
Yeah, the city clerk's office, the city clerk's office and the city manager's office have been looking at this particular item. We haven't gotten to, we've reached out to folks, we're still collecting data and information, but as soon as we get to a point where we think we can come to some type of safe conclusion, we will undoubtedly provide that to the board. But we are working on that, and the city clerk is doing a great job in making a lot of phone calls, talking to a lot of people, collecting the data, even in some cases, we may have to reach out to speak to previous employees to try to track this down.
Okay. And my last thing, really going off on the subject. I just want to kind of go over the revised schedule that we have, Claire. I just want to make sure I understand what's going on. So right now, we're looking at, we have a meeting on Monday at 6 o'clock with the charter amendments. And then we have our BOC regular workshop on Tuesday, but that was changed to 4 o'clock. And can you tell me why that was changed to 4 o'clock, or?
Oh, I didn't see that.
On the 31st, July 31st.
We have two meetings on that day. One's a regular meeting, and the other one's a special meeting to have the millage rate approved and set the public hearing dates.
So what times are these meetings? What time's the workshop? What time is the special budget meeting to adopt the millage rate?
The special meeting would be directly after the regular meeting.
So we're going to have our workshop, which is normally 2 o'clock. By the charter, it says 2 o'clock. We moved it to 4 o'clock.
What day?
On the 31st of July.
It's at 1 o'clock.
Where are you seeing that?
Tuesday, July 31st, BOC regular workshop at 1 o'clock.
It's 1 o'clock. Okay, I apologize. My mistake.
And again, the special meeting will be right directly after that
Okay,
meeting.
so that comes after.
Monday,
Those are other deadlines, staff deadlines to get in items that you see under there at 4 o'clock.
I'm sorry.
Tuesday,
Tuesday we have 2.
BOC special meeting to adopt the millage rate.
Correct. Okay.
So we have one on Monday, and we have one on Tuesday.
Correct. Monday night, 6 o'clock, and
Okay.
Tuesday. No, it's 1 o'clock, my mistake, I misread. Yeah, 1 o'clock, and then we have the special meeting right after it for the millage. Okay.
With respect to the, and the clerk can provide some additional insight if I misspeak, or, as far as the charter review joint meeting, that meeting is critically important that we leave there with some decision points from the board, because effectively, if we don't, we will not be able to get all the language, all the things accomplished to get items on the ballot for the election. So it is critically important that we get the input and perspectives from the board, because then we have a lot of staff work that goes into that. We will make sure that you get all the information in advance to be able to put your notes in the margin and provide some perspective, and the Charter Review Committee will also be able to share their comments and points, but we definitely need to leave there with direction from the board as to how we would like to proceed concerning the charter.
Will the attorney be looking at the wording beforehand, so.
The
And he will be here at that
The
meeting.
attorney is actually the facilitator for the Charter Review Committee, and we've made some substantial progress by incorporating that. So he's actually drafting the language that's being modified in the charter, and then is going to draft the ballot language and draft the layperson's interpretation. So when we said we're doing this, he'll say, this is what this really means to the voters, and we'll place that on the website. And I haven't told Kurt yet, but I'll tell him now that we're gonna put a publication piece out to the residents so they know exactly your charter's up for amendments, what a charter is, find this information, et cetera. So really doing a good community push, because we want people to vote on those charter amendments and not get into the situation where there's voter fatigue, where they only answer a couple questions and leave.
How many, do you have any idea how many things they're talking about at the moment? I have not. talked to-
They are going from cover to cover on the charter. They've looked at every particular section. I think the last two sections that they're looking at is the manager section and the civil service board and the treasurer, yeah. But I think they've gotten, from the meetings I've been in, they've made substantial progress and worked through a lot of different things. So, yeah.
I've seen a draft of it, and I don't know how current it is, but there are tons of changes. I mean, tons. I don't see how it's possible to go through that whole thing.
I guess.
That's what I was just gonna say.
That's kind of what I'm
It's just not
asking is,
possible. We
do we
can't.
want to put a ton of things on the ballot in November, because what Mr. Evans just said, voter fatigue, I mean, it's going to get to the point, oh, crap.
Well, forget
Well,
voter fatigue. We're not going to be able to do this on Monday night and then finish
You know,
it and then Wednesday vote on
On
it.
Friday, I mean, how would we be able to, I mean, even if we sat, and I had asked the city clerk if we were allowed to just sit, not open your mouth, but just sit at Friday morning at the, this Friday morning at 10 o'clock, okay, for the,
It's also going to be on TV.
pardon?
It's also on TV.
Well, I know, but I would just like to sit and just absorb it better that way maybe. And then come on Monday night, and when we don't really even have any paperwork on it, or will we? Or even if we do, how can we absorb all that when they've had months to work on it? And I don't know that it's fair to ask the Board of Commission to.
Well, the board can certainly
Can we
select.
defer?
You can select certain provisions that you want to go to the voters, so you can say, and I've seen a lot of communities do this, okay, thank you, Charter Review Board. Which one of these are the most pressing items you want to set to the voters? Item A, item D, item W. Okay, let's look at those. I'm comfortable with the language. Let's go with 3 or 4 ballot questions every year until we effectively work our way through the charter. So I've seen that. I've seen where some communities take it and want to do the whole thing. So you have that flexibility. So you may say, hey, we're only going to be approving 4 or 5 questions, and you can do that. But the Charter Review Committee has effectively gone through the entire document, and they've done some really,
I think it's
they've done some exceptional work.
Wow.
So it really is what the pleasure of the board is on that. And I can get with the city clerk with regards to getting you, the board, the information sooner rather than later as far as what the components that the Charter Review Committee has already addressed. And then after the meeting on Friday, giving you here's the revised sections based on the conversation that occurred on Friday. So you'll have a little bit of a lead time to look at it.
Can we get,
Okay.
I guess this question goes to Claire, can we get a copy of what will be on the ballot, like for the state and county and all that?
Get a copy of their minutes to their last meeting.
Yeah.
Get a copy of
The
the minutes
city
to last meeting.
attorney, he started on it Monday, I believe. He's already preparing a document you'll get, that it simplifies it.
No, I guess, no, that's why I'm not asking that. I'm saying, if the state and the county already has 35 items on there, do we want to put 10 more items on there, or do we want to stay with 5? So I guess I'm trying to see how big the ballot already is. So like, say, imagine saying, we can say, hey, we only want to put 3, 4, 5, 6 on there versus 20 new things.
All right, but to come to that decision, this document I have is like probably this many pages. Both sides, finer print, much finer print, and there's like, every page has like maybe 5 or more crossouts and red lines, and, I mean,
That's why you need to get that document, the one she's talking about.
We're
You need to
doing
send
that.
it to everybody.
We are. I'm already preparing that now to send that, and I'm waiting to see what the city attorney's gonna send me and include all that. We're gonna put a nice packet
But
together.
that's.
oh, I know,
that's
I'm
what
just saying, I don't think it's possible to go through it in one night.
What I'm saying, Maggie, is that's what we're doing on our charter. What is the state got on its, and the county has on its, that you're gonna be voting on?
Other referendums.
Other
Right.
referendums.
They've got
So if
questions
they-
too,
they've
so
got
we don't
30
want to load up with them.
If they've got
That's what I'm saying.
35 or 40 items already on there, and it's supposed to be a ton of them on there by the state and the county, do we want to put 10 more?
Oh, I see where you're going.
You know,
Your
or do we
your
want to
ballot.
pick just 4 or 5 or 6, depending on how many numbers that they've already got, so we don't burn the people out, I guess is what I'm saying.
The other issue with it is if you wait till the March election, you're going to have a lot better turnout. Because
Yes.
more people are going to vote during a city election than they are in a national election. I mean, that's normal here anyway.
And we won't have to rush through it then either.
Correct.
Right.
I think that's the direction that they needed for Monday night, coming Monday night. Because I know it was said a few months ago when they first got started, they'd like to see 2 or 3 questions on the November ballot. So they worked through that, and in the time that was allotted, they were able to go through pretty much go through the whole charter, and hopefully we'll finalize that on Friday. But the direction to them on Monday would be if any of that will be on the November ballot. If it's not, we'll put it on the March. If you do choose questions to be on that I need to send to the elections office on the 21st of August for the November ballot, I do plan, besides the social media part that city manager was talking about in informing the public, I'm working with the county to also put that informational piece in each utility bill for the city.
excellent.
That goes out from the
Excellent.
county. So even if they're a registered voter or not, it'll, it's easier to put it in all of them, and they all talk about it or whatever, and,
That's very
and
good.
add that to it
Yeah,
as well.
That's good. Because I think it's wonderful that we've had the citizen initiatives, to have these committees, to have the participants. So I certainly wouldn't want anyone to feel like, we were kind of putting that on a back burner or something. But yeah, I have the same feeling, I guess, that the mayor did. I just thought, oh my God, how much are we going to absorb, But we'll work through it. And I have a question. Is the Charter Review Committee and the Civil Service Commission Committee allowed to meet at the same time in the same room because you're notifying people?
They are. It's a joint meeting, and matter of fact, 4 of the members of the civil service is on the same.
Committee.
There's only 1 member that is not a member
Maybe
of
talking
the
to themselves.
charter. So
Interesting.
because they're discussing the civil service part, it only makes sense that both boards are together. That
That's
one
great.
additional person to come on and add their comment as well.
Right, okay.
And
Thank you.
we've noticed it, and it's already on the website of that meeting.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, are there any other subjects that we need to discuss before we adjourn?
Everybody got their directions?
Yay.
You order dinner, Maggie? Just thought I'd ask.
We are adjourned at 4:23.
I guess that was a no.